The 2024 NFL Draft is officially in the books. Thank you guys so much for watching the streams and the videos up to this point. It was a ton of fun, but the draft being over now means the silliest exercise of all. That's draft grades. Of course, we're not going to know how these teams actually did, how these players will actually develop or not for a few years down the line. You know, people even want to say after 1 year, oh, this blah, 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 blah. Or looks like they didn't do so well. We won't know for a few years. That's important to remember. And of course, if I did give your team a bad grade, it doesn't mean that it will end up being bad. Obviously, it's just don't love the pick, don't love the player where they took them. That's what we're trying to account for. Because a team with a ton of picks can just win the draft and win the grades because they got a bunch of really good players. That does factor in, but it's also the strength of the class, the impactful starters, the big-time special teams players. 3 phases of the game, guys, not just offense and defense. You get a really good return man or a big-time gunner, big-time coverage player in the 6th or 7th round. I'm going to talk about it. This is done alphabetically by team abbreviation. I'll get back to the Giants later. ESPN just knows it's my favorite team. They pushed them up to the front. But it's alphabetically by team order. If you don't care about what I have to say about any other team, jump to your favorite team. It's pretty easy to figure out. But let's jump into it. I am giving the Cardinals an A+. They had a lot of picks to work with, no question, but I think they did a really good job of the players they got. And the only pick that I really didn't like was Tip Ryman at the start of the 3rd round. I liked the player, but he's a blocking tight end. I didn't really view him this highly in the draft. I thought other tight ends were better value, but if you want a blocking tight end for the Cardinals, this is a good pick. And if you switched him and Christian Jones, I'm not complaining one bit at all. So I'm just trying to focus on the players that they got as well, and I think they did a tremendous job. We'll start with Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, arguably the best player in the entire draft. He's a tremendous receiver, great size, very good speed, great route running, great body control, great hands. The only thing is he doesn't really offer a ton after the catch, but does everything else so amazingly that I'm not really super worried about it. And of course, he can just, perhaps in the NFL, develop after the catch. That's a possibility, right? He's a big enough, strong enough, good enough athlete that that's absolutely a possibility. At the back end of round 1, they went with Darius Robinson from Missouri. They list him as an edge. He's not really an edge. He is a hybrid inside-outside type player. He can play 3-4 defensive end. He can even play 3-4 outside linebacker if you needed him to, because this is a guy who is actually pretty good when he's on that runway. So big, so strong, so fast. 295, 290 pounds. Came into the combine at 285, ran barely sub 5, but that's good for an interior defensive lineman, right? And that's a lot of what he's going to be asked to do. If you look at the Cardinals' defensive scheme, they are a 4-3 defense, but based on guys like Zaven Collins in there, this gives you a little bit more flexibility. Now, Zaven Collins has really come on strong as an edge, but Darius Robinson can be a base defensive end, right? You have B.J. Ojulari, you have Zaven Collins, you know, lighter, more, I would say, like, true pass rushers as opposed to, you know, true 3-down defensive linemen, especially B.J. Ojulari. I know Collins does actually have some decent size, but Robinson can slide inside on obvious pass rush downs. He's a guy that can play defensive tackle if you want him to on 3rd and 10, and he's just way too quick for an interior offensive lineman to handle. We saw that in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. He was unblockable. Max Melton at the start of the 2nd round I thought was a really nice pickup for Arizona. He was someone that a lot of people loved as a top 50 player in this class. I thought he was borderline top 50, but he has the size that says he can stick on the outside with longer arms, and of course is a tremendous athlete. He's a really, really good player. The Cardinals needed to go and upgrade their secondary, and I think they did that in a big way in this draft. Trey Benson was their next pick. I see him as RB1 in this class. I had him as a top 50 player. I think he's a really, really talented guy with true RB1 type size, over 215 pounds, ran 4.3 something at the combine, 4.39, and he plays fast. That's not a surprise. He can catch the football out of the backfield. He will end up being RB1 for Arizona. I'm not sure if it's this year with James Conner in there. You might have some type of a running back rotation as we commonly see in the NFL nowadays, but I really like the Trey Benson pick. Isaiah Adams, another Illinois player. We'll talk about Tip Ryman more in a second. Isaiah Adams, maybe you're drafting him as a tackle. He's likely going to end up playing guard, especially with the addition of Christian Jones. You know, you're fine with Paris Johnson Jr. He's going to play left tackle. Right tackle is going to be Jonah Williams, who you brought in free agency. Isaiah Adams was another guy who had a really good offseason, really boosted his stock down in Mobile as well, and I think profiles best as a guard, and he profiles to be a very solid interior offensive lineman. His teammate Tip Ryman is a very good blocking tight end, a monster blocker, might offer some receiving upside, but that's not really going to be most of his game. Elijah Jones is great size at corner. You know, it's clear that the Cardinals had a type this year, and it was big, strong, and long players. Now, of course, everyone makes fun of, you know, when I say long and length, but that's just, you know, the scouting term. It's guys with long arms and long limbs that can, you know, be used to get hands on your opposition quicker. And that is a lot of what football is. In the trenches, first contact can be what wins. If you're a corner, first contact on a wide receiver can reroute them. Length is very important. As a linebacker, it allows you to get hands on the offensive lineman more quickly and control the block. You're able to stack and shed and make a play. So it does matter. Of course, as a safety in the back end, it allows you to make more plays on the football. These are things that, and of course, in run defense as well. These are things NFL teams care about, and the Cardinals certainly did. Elijah Jones actually had some really good advanced metrics if you looked at this cornerback class in terms of passer rating allowed, and had some decent ball production as well. This is someone that could end up being a starter for them. He's not going to play the nickel. This is an outside corner and a good one. Max Melton could eventually end up moving inside if they wanted to do that. And man, Dadrian Taylor Demerson, what a great pickup this was at the start of the 4th round. He can play the true single high center field type role if you wanted to do that. He was one of the only guys in the class that I thought had that capability. He's got tremendous range, and another guy that's just a playmaker. Great ability to go up and get the football. Xavier Thomas was another just take a shot on a player with great pedigree, former 5-star recruit to Clemson, never really ended up breaking out. But the thing with Xavier Thomas is he has shown flashes of being a dominant player. He's had dominant reps, which with his monster athletic profile and explosiveness, with the proper refinement and development, you might have something there. Even if it's just as a designated pass rusher or special teamer, you took him in the 5th round. Christian Jones was a top 55 player for Daniel Jeremiah. ESPN had him a little bit lower. I had him kind of in the middle between the two of them. Of course, I am a big Texas fan, big Texas homer, hook 'em horns, but I like Christian Jones. I don't think that he was as good in 2022 as he was in 2023, but that kind of shows how he's getting better. And then had a great offseason, dominated the Senior Bowl as well, really boosted his stock, and I thought he was going to end up going a lot higher than this. I could see him starting at right tackle within his rookie contract, and this gives you flexibility to not have to extend Jonah Williams. Again, it's not a 2-year deal. I'm not a big Jonah Williams guy. Christian Jones has potential to be a starter. You end things with Tejuan Palmer, who is a deep threat, shot down the board. I think will be a contributor on special teams, could be a gunner with that size and speed profile. So we'll see what happens with him. But overall, the Cardinals got a bunch of impact starters and a bunch of different role players that I think will be really, really successful. You can find a starter in Melton and potentially in Elijah Jones at corner. Tip Ryman's your big blocking tight end. Isaiah Adams could compete to start at guard in his rookie contract. Trey Benson will end up being your starting running back. Darius Robinson, versatile defensive lineman. And of course, we know what Marvin Harrison Jr. brings to the table. This is an A+ for me. The Atlanta Falcons get a D. It's a little harsh, but I really was not a huge fan of their draft. It's really going to be contingent upon whether or not Michael Penix Jr. ends up being a solid starter for them. I did not consider him to be worth a 1st-round pick. Now, he does have a live arm, electric arm strength, and was a real playmaker for Washington. I mean, really diced up Texas in the college football playoff. It was the best game of his career, but he also had some really bad games. You look at Washington State as an example. This is a guy who forces the ball a little bit too often, and his deep accuracy is overstated. You know, he had 2 awesome tackles, one of which was a 1st-rounder. Roger Rosengarten went in the 2nd. He had 3 top 100 receivers. Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk was a top 50 pick. Roma Dunze was a top 10 pick. He had a great supporting cast, and I'm not really trying to ding him for that, but I'm trying to say, hey, these guys put him in a really good position to be successful. And I don't know how that's going to work out against NFL teams. Penix, for me, has potential because of the arm talent, but I would not have taken him in the top 10, and that's why I'm digging the Falcons pretty heavily. And I am also factoring in that you signed Kirk Cousins to a monster deal with $100 million guaranteed. I get that you can kind of get an out after 2 years, but you drafted a 24-year-old quarterback to maybe sit for 2 years. And even if you don't, if he becomes a starter and plays well, that's great. But you're also then still paying Kirk Cousins a monster contract, and it'll be $25 million in dead cap if you cut him after year 2, $12.5 million after year 3. But it just, for me, if you sign Kirk Cousins to that monster deal, go put some talent around him, upgrade your defense. Taking a quarterback, man, it's just, if I felt stronger about Michael Penix Jr. in this class, maybe I feel less bad about this, because I like Jordan Love, but that was in the 20s. That was at the end of the first round. This is a top 10 pick. I get it. If you feel good about your quarterback, take a chance on him. A lot of people love Michael Penix Jr. I just didn't happen to be one of them. It's just, I really could not rationalize this at number 8, given everything we know about the Falcons. And then they made another interesting move, which was trading up for Rook Orororo. They traded their third-round pick, or a third-round pick, to move up to get him, one of the first picks of the second round. But I like Rook Orororo. I do. I think he's a really good player. He's athletic. He is someone who's really good against the run and probably has his best football ahead of him. Yes, was he the second best defensive tackle in the class? I think he was drafted, because I think only Byron Murphy went ahead of him. And we saw Johnny Newton go not too far after that. We saw a run of defensive tackles, Devondre Sweat, Braden Fisk. But Rook is good and has a high ceiling. I like that he gets to, learn from Grady Jarrett. I think that's a good fit, Clemson guys. But the trade up to get him, trading a third-round pick, maybe he would have been there. That's like hearsay. I can't really say whether he would have been or not. Consensus big boards are not what an NFL team's going to have, right? So I like Rook Orororo. I would have had him, probably slightly above 68 in the class. But, I think this is, you can call it a little bit of a reach. I think that's not really a term I love all the time, because even Michael Penix, apparently teams would have been ready to get him inside the top 10, tried to trade up for him. Who knows if he would have made it to 15 or wherever if the Falcons tried to trade down. So I don't really know that reach is there, if the need is there, and if the player you think is good enough. So he's just trading the third-round pick. It was an interesting move. I didn't love it, but I do like the player. We'll see if he can end up developing as a pass rusher. Braylon Trice is a good, solid floor type guy. He's not the craziest athlete. It was kind of weird that he came out at 245, because he was listed significantly heavier on the Washington website, closer to 270, 275. Came into the combine at 245, didn't test well. I don't know, just wasn't all about it. I do like his hands. He's a good effort player. He was one of the highest pass rush win rate guys in college football, but I think he's fine in the third round. What's the ceiling with Braylon Trice? I think he's a good player. In the fourth round, this is another high upside guy in Brandon Dorlus. A little bit of a tweener, 6'3", 283. Is he athletic enough to be an edge? Is he big enough to be a defensive tackle? I don't know. I do like Brandon Dorlus, though. I think he offers you at least a solid pass rush on the interior on third and long and things like that. And in the fourth round, I think, it's totally fine to take a shot on him. J.D. Bertrand from Notre Dame apparently is a really, high, well, you see two-time team captain here. He's a really, highly thought-of type guy, a high IQ type guy, a team leader. And that's valuable in a locker room, whether he ends up being a special teamer or a starter. The athleticism's just okay, and offers decent value as a blitzer. I do like Jace McClellan. I feel like he kind of got undervalued in the draft process just because the running back class was nothing exceptional. But he was a decent player for Alabama, and I think injury is something that, maybe tanks his stock a little bit, ends up pushing him to the 6th round. But I like Jace McClellan. Offers pretty good power and size. It's a nice combo with Bijan Robinson. And then Casey Washington was a really interesting selection. This is someone who actually does have decent upside, but probably will just end up being a special teamer. Zion Logue, maybe a rotational defensive tackle. D is going to seem really harsh, but it was just the trades that they made and the reaches, or the reach, even though I said I don't like that term. For me, Penix was a reach based on where I had him. He was just outside the top 50 for me. ESPN having him at 43. I know some people love Penix, thought he was arguably, one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the class, not named Caleb Williams, or, some people even liked him more than Drake May. But I just couldn't get on board with that. I think him at 8, with Kirk Cousins, it just kills the grade for me. But if he ends up working out, you can call this an A+ because you spent a top 10 pick on your franchise quarterback. That's good enough for even one class, let alone the rest of the picks they got. I'm going to give the Baltimore Ravens an A. I think the Ravens didn't really do anything crazy in this draft. They just stayed where they were and took whichever player fell to them. And they got positions of need, and they got value. I thought they did a really good job. They started with Nate Wiggins. I think him at 30 was pretty good value, but I know the Ravens didn't think that he was going to get to them at 30, so they obviously jumped on the opportunity. Some Ravens fans are down because, why would we take a corner, blah, blah, blah. We need a receiver. Some didn't even want the Ravens to take a tackle. It's like you got to look at that room. Morgan Moses is gone. Ronnie Stanley's not reliable. Tackle was a huge need for this team, but you didn't really get any big ones falling to you at 30. Maybe if Tyler Guyton gets there, the Ravens go in that direction or somebody else. But it didn't end up happening. They go Nate Wiggins. Obvious upside. Great speed. Great ability to mirror and match. He's got, really quick feet. Really high effort player. Not really going to do much in the run game. He's obviously quite thin at 6'1", 173. Rail thin. He's got the me build, which is, I'm not playing corner in the NFL, so I guess I am a little bit taller than Nate Wiggins, to be fair, but still, I'm not getting drafted, is my point. He is not really able to hold up against the run at all, and that could be exploited, but if he can cover the way we know he can, it's going to be a really solid pick for the Ravens, and he's going to a team that I feel like is great at developing defensive back. This gives you more versatility with Marlon Humphrey. You can play him in the slot where he's thrived in the past. Wiggins is a boundary corner, but he's going to be a field corner. He's got exceptional speed. Really, really good player. Not going to ever be playing the slot for you, you'd think. In round 2, took Roger Rosengarten from Washington. He was Michael Penix's blindside protector, and he's a really good player. There was a thought that he might have been able to sneak into the first round, and he has upside to start at right tackle for the Ravens, as we talked about, that really needed to upgrade the position and even get more bodies in the room after trading Morgan Moses. This was something they needed to do, and they got very fortunate that Roger Rosengarten fell right to them at the end of the second round. Disa Isaac, get another edge in the mix. I like it. Penn State guy. Get to team him up with another Penn State edge rusher in Odafe Owe. Can we rely on the health of David Ojabo? I'm not sure. But Isaac is a decent athlete with high upside. He's your typical 3-4 outside linebacker. Jadeveon Clowney had a great season for Baltimore, but it was going to be tough to replace him. They at least get another guy in the mix. I like Adisa Isaac as a player. I wasn't overwhelmed with him when I watched him. I thought Chop Robinson was really the guy to watch, even though he was less productive. But Adisa Isaac could end up being a really solid player for Baltimore. And then maybe the favorite pick of mine that they made was Devontae Tez Walker from UNC, transfer from Kent State. He's got legitimate upside. He's a big-time deep threat with NFL size, some NFL speed, doesn't really drop the ball very much on tape. It was really only 3 times that I counted over all the games that I watched from him. It's not amazing. Obviously, you'd like 0, but that's not the reality. Sometimes guys drop the football. But Walker has tremendous upside down the field. I think you can kind of get caught up in the drops a little bit because at the Senior Bowl, where he was dropping the ball all the time, it was, a disastrous showing. But he still looked good to me because of what he showed his strengths were, which is getting open, creating separation, and getting down the field. He has instant value as a deep threat. He's still a little bit raw. He's raw as a route runner. I want to see him look more comfortable catching the football after the disaster at the Senior Bowl. But overall, Tez Walker has legitimate upside to be a starting receiver and a big-time deep threat for any offense. He'll, at the very least, end up spacing the field. I'd like to see him learn some more of the nuances of route running, route pacing, And he's going to end up, I think, being a very nice player. I love Tez Walker. And then TJ Tampa, everyone kept asking me, why this guy was falling. It's like, hey, I don't know that teams love corners that are not super scheme versatile, that are not super explosive without great long speed. Like, there were things not to like about TJ Tampa, but at the end of the 4th round, you can get over them. And especially going to Baltimore, he's a really good press corner with long hands, but he's actually quite good in zone coverage as well. I found him to be a better zone corner than a man corner, even though he has the size and length to suggest that he would be quite a good press man corner. The speed is kind of something that really pops, and you notice it's lacking. But again, at this point, the value is absolutely there on TJ Tampa. And again, going to a team that is a fantastic fit. So you really can't be mad about that. And then down the board, they got some depth and some special teamers. Devin Leary actually, threw the ball pretty well at the combine, and looked to be one of the better quarterbacks there, to be honest. NC State transfer to Kentucky. He was someone that I always expected a little bit more from, and we didn't really see it. Taking a chance on him down the board to be a backup in case there's an injury. I don't hate it, of course. And then Rasheen Ali. If not for an injury at the Senior Bowl, he probably goes a little bit ahead of this. But Rasheen Ali was somebody that, coming in preseason, I thought was going to be one of the first running backs off the board, one of the first 5 or 10. He ends up going a little bit lower than that. But he is a nice replacement for Gus Edwards that's headed to the Chargers in Los Angeles. And again, good depth and someone that probably will end up playing a decent amount, especially with his added ability as a receiver. Buffalo gets a nice, solid B. I think they had a really nice draft. Brandon Beane, who we all expected kind of to trade up, go get his guy at receiver, kept trading down, got some extra picks, ended up picking higher in the draft. And I think the Bills did a great job. B might seem a little bit, low, but this was a solid draft. That's what a B is. You'll take that. Not only do C's get degrees, but B's do as well, of course. Keon Coleman was their first pick, and I'm a big Keon Coleman guy. I thought he was a top 25 player in the class. I think he was my number 25 player in the class. And I don't really see him as someone that plays especially slow. He's great after the catch. He can really go up and get the football. I mean, he was the best jump ball receiver in this class. He's a monster red zone threat that just isn't the best route runner, but isn't terrible for his size. I think he gets in and out of his breaks pretty well for someone that's 6'3", 6'4", 215 pounds, returns punts for Florida State. This is a really, really solid athlete. And when I looked at the Bills, and I consistently mocked Keon Coleman to them in the first round for, it felt like months, I looked at where the Bills struggled. And Bills fans will know this, and you can get excited about Keon Coleman. How many times did Josh Allen just rip the ball down the field, hit the receiver on the money, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and they dropped the ball or didn't come down with it? Gabe Davis especially. That's going to be less of a problem for Keon Coleman. If you like the hero ball that Josh Allen plays, not only as a runner, but as a passer of the football, throw the ball up, Keon Coleman will come down with it at a much higher rate. I think he's going to end up being a touchdown machine for Buffalo, and you can convert, 3rd and 15s when Keon Coleman's on the field. Give him a chance, let him go up and get the football. It's more than a 50-50 ball with Keon Coleman. I love the player, but even more, I love the fit, and they traded down multiple times to get him. Cole Bishop at the end of the second. I think Cole Bishop's a really solid player. He was up there for the best safety in the draft. It's pretty close with a lot of these safeties, and Bishop has enough speed to be able to play over the top and play well. He's instinctive. He's someone that, and of course, we say that, oh, he's white. He's instinctive. He's a smart guy. But a lot of these safeties are instinctive without top-tier speed, but Bishop actually does have very good speed. Newbin's one of the most instinctive players in this class, and he certainly lacks top speed. But Bishop definitely has it. And I think for a team that really needed to improve safety after losing Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, Cole Bishop is a good pickup at the end of the second round. Dwayne Carter, somebody, Lil Wayne, a lot of people really, really like. I think he's got starting upside on the interior. And I think it might have just been a place where you get to best player available, and you're like, all right, Dwayne Carter's going to join the defensive tackle rotation. and end up being an impactful player for us. I like what he brings to the table alongside Ed Oliver. I think that's a really nice pickup for them. Ray Davis is a bowling ball. I know Daniel Jeremiah had him as one of the top running backs in the entire draft, maybe even RB2. And when you watch Ray Davis against Florida, you'll see why. I mean, this guy put up nearly 300 yards, I want to say, against Florida, and he had a bunch of really nice games. He, of course, as a smaller guy, he's got that low center of gravity, of course, which is said here. Was that subliminal? Did I read that? I'm not sure. But he really does. A lot of these small running backs are tough to bring down because they're so stout. Look at Maurice Jones-Drew. And their contact balance is great as a result. But I think Davis is a good enough athlete as well. And as you see a lot of running backs nowadays, good with the football as a receiver. And you have to be, because teams are not typically drafting just a downhill runner, you know, with as one of the first backs off the board anymore. It's not happening. You have to be able to do a bunch of different things. Cedric Van Pran Granger was the next pickup. One of the better centers in this class. You lose Mitch Morse. Van Pran Granger could end up being a starter in Buffalo, so I don't really mind that at all, especially not in the 5th round. Very nice selection. Edefwan Olifosio, explosive downhill blitzer. I don't know that he's going to play as a 3-down player, but is definitely athletic and could certainly evolve to be a better coverage player. Javon Solomon, I thought was a nice pick. One of the more underrated edge rushers. Of course, not going to be super hyped up. Doesn't have that top-tier size at 6'1", 246, but is fast and explosive and is someone that I could see making an impact as a designated pass rusher right away. There were a lot of guys in the class that kind of fit that bill for me. Muhammad Kamara is another one. And then got more depth down the board with Tylen Vrabel, Daquan Hardy, and Travis Clayton, who I knew almost nothing about. But if you run a 4.7 40 at 307 pounds, there might be something there. From England, the international players were flying off the board this year. Interesting developmental player, purely based on athletic profile, but I can't tell you much about him other than that. I'm also going to give the Panthers a B. Another solid draft. Xavier Legette was their first pickup here. Been calling him Xavier Legette for the longest time now. He never corrected anybody until his draft interview, because Roger Goodell called him Legette on the stage, and then they interviewed him like, what do you think about Roger Goodell saying your name? He's like, I said it right. Hey, it's Legette. I tell him, or whatever. He's got a crazy voice. You got to look it up. He's a real country kid. It's just, you don't hear people talk like that too much nowadays. But he's a really fun player. Seems like a really good guy. I like Xavier Legette, man. He's great after the catch. He can really get down the field as well. Great athlete. I mean, built like a big running back. 6'1", 221, and it shows. He is big, strong, and fast. I don't really see the DK Metcalf comp as much. I see what people are going there with the speed and with the build, but DK's a lot bigger. Legette, not quite the same player that DK was coming out, in my opinion. I had Legette as my 50th best player in the draft. DK back in his class, and it's different classes, I get it. He was a top 20 player for me, so bit of a difference there. But Legette's really fun and fits in fairly well with this Panthers receiving core. You only have Deontay Johnson for 1 year, so I still wanted to see them get, you know, more of a technician as a route runner. They still don't really have that. I know Deontay Johnson for 1 year, but I wanted to see them get somebody who is a little bit better at getting open. Legette's route tree is not super large, not super refined as a route runner, so we'll see what he ends up looking like, but get him the football in space, and you got a problem for defenses. How about this, though? Jonathan Brooks. Hook him, of course. Jonathan Brooks was my RB2 in the draft, and it may have been RB1 for the injury. Now, he only has 1 year of starting, and his vision is not always the best. Sometimes he can get a little bit impatient. Now, of course, they say great vision, but I don't fully agree with that. I agree with patient, but sometimes he just would run away from the hole, and sometimes he would try to hit it too quickly and didn't have the patience to let his blocks develop, which I think goes along with vision. Sometimes he did, but it's inconsistent, which you'd expect for a 1 year starter. Jonathan Brooks' best ability by far is making second and third level players miss, especially safeties. I mean, it's unbelievable. If he gets to the safety, there's no chance. He will make the safety miss. It's a touchdown. If you're even, he's leaving. Usually you'll say that for receivers, but, he can outrun safeties easily. He's got electric speed. Post ACL tear, that's a little bit scary. But he's flashed ability with obviously tremendous speed. Jump cuts are great, but he's flashed these two traits of vision and patience. But overall, that's still, and as it is for a lot of rookies, right? Still an evolving part of his game. And I think with more reps, of course, 1 year of starting at Texas, he's going to end up, being a fantastic player. But you did trade up for running back. But also, I like running backs. They're underrated at this point. We've gone too far. I don't care if you traded up to get one. He's a good player. Giants may have taken him with the next pick. That's a possibility. Trevin Wallace. I like Trevin Wallace. Really solid athlete. There are a lot of good athletes in this class. We know the Panthers typically have drafted with a focus on athleticism, and this is no different. 6'1", 240, run 4.5 flat. That's exceptional speed. And he flashes on tape, which is something that you really can hold on to, because if you can get a more consistent version of Trevin Wallace, you're going to have a starting type player. I kind of see him as think about what Frankie Louvu was able to do in Carolina. I think Wallace could offer similar upside. Have to see if he reaches that ceiling. Of course, gotta love Jatavion Sanders. So he was explosive, or at least fast on tape. He didn't test well. I asked about it. I heard the work ethic maybe was not always where you wanted it to be. That's a little concerning. He really didn't have a good offseason process. Combine, pro day, didn't test well, looked a little disinterested. But when you look at the film, it's good. But you wonder, did Sark scheme him open more than he got himself open? But I see a guy that has tremendous hands, looks electric with the football at his size. I'm a Jatavion Sanders guy. Is it Texas bias? Maybe. But at the top of the 4th round, how can you complain about that? Shaw Smith-Wade from Washington State had a great Senior Bowl. He was someone that was really sticky in coverage. And for a quicker than fast guy, he looked fast down in Mobile in the one-on-one. So his best football, I think, could be ahead of him. For a guy that had no interceptions in his college career, or at least not in 2023 from what I saw. He had 2 interceptions in the Senior Bowl game. The game, not even practice, the game. Pretty funny the way football works sometimes, and that's why I don't get too caught up in ball production, especially with college corners. Usually all these guys getting drafted are the best corner on their team. You might not be getting targeted so much, which, can certainly limit your ball production. And then they took Jaden Crumedy and Michael Barrett down the board. I'm thinking, guys that can rotate in or make an impact on special teams. And Michael Barrett, certainly extremely experienced. And Crumedy is somebody that ESPN ranked him as a top 20 defensive tackle. It's not a great defensive tackle class. I didn't end up getting a chance to watch him, so I don't really have too much of a refined opinion other than what I've read, but I'm assuming interior defensive line depth can never really have too much. I'm going to go A- for the Chicago Bears. I think they had a really good draft. They started with only 4 picks. They ended up trading back into the draft for Austin Booker. We'll get to that in a minute. But you stayed at number 1 overall. You made a great trade with the Panthers to get number 1 overall. This ends up looking amazing because you get DJ Moore and Caleb Williams now, plus others, for what ended up being, of course, the number 1 overall pick last year for Bryce Young. What a trade by the Bears. What a trade. It gave you another year to evaluate Justin Fields. We found out he wasn't the guy, obviously. Caleb Williams, I think, could be. Arguably the best player in this draft. Tremendous upside, tremendous improviser. Incredible arm talent overall. He is a monster player. You cannot fault drafting him at number 1 overall. He is so good, and I think the franchise quarterback there in Chicago, I feel really good about him as a player, and how can you not? He was the first player off the board. And they didn't get crazy with number 9. They took Rome Odunze. I think Odunze is a stud. Easy top 10 player in the class, and it was a stacked top 10. You got to think about that. He was the 3rd receiver off the board, but in any other class might have been the 1st receiver off the board. The route polish, the ability to beat press, the body control, the hands. Just like Marvin Harrison Jr., this is somebody that made the incredibly difficult play look incredibly easy. And part of the reason I'm so high on Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk, for example, is I saw them consistently bail out Michael Penix if the ball was a little bit errant. They would just go up and get it, contort their bodies in unbelievable ways to make unbelievable catches. I love Rome Odunze, and I love the fit in Chicago. You have Keenan Allen just for 1 year, and you know who I see when I watch Rome Odunze? It's not Jamar Chase. It's Keenan Allen. Who better to play alongside than your comp? Rome Odunze, I think, has a similar skill set, is similarly polished, but is also a really good athlete. Rome Odunze is a beast. I just don't really see him not working out. It is the draft. It is college to NFL. Anything can happen. But I think at worst, he's going to be a really solid player. Even if he never develops into being a superstar, I think he's going to be solid as they come. In the third round, they got Kieran Amagaji. As I've said, did not get my hands on any Yale footage. I mean, I saw clips and things like that, but I'll defer to people that actually, watched him play and studied his film. I didn't. I would say that Kieran Amagaji has obvious NFL size and athleticism. He tested well, and he apparently looks super athletic on tape, has obvious size. The one thing I heard about him is that he doesn't overpower Ivy League defenders as much as you might see when he's so much bigger and stronger than those guys. You just want to see him use that functional strength a little bit more. He's a developmental offensive tackle that has a sky-high ceiling. Doesn't have to play right away. Feels like a really great fit, and especially a good backup if an injury happens. Torrey Taylor was the best punter in this draft, probably. As I said on Twitter, he is the most experienced punter probably in the history of the game. If you're playing at Iowa, you have to be. There's no shortage of film on Torrey Taylor, let me tell you that. Oh, man, I wish he just had some more punts to evaluate. Nope. The most punts I've ever seen of any player ever. The Iowa offense made sure that Torrey Taylor got a real good look from NFL scouts. And then Austin Booker, he's a great player. I had him as a top 100 guy. I didn't end up ordering guys post 50, but I definitely really liked him. And even though he didn't test especially well, I'm going to yield to what I saw on tape, which was fantastic athleticism and explosiveness and NFL size. 6'5" with long arms. I think he's going to end up being a really, really solid, at least rotational pass rusher with starter upside. The Bears did a really good job this draft. I'm going to hand out another pretty high grade here for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to give them a B+. They kicked things off with Amarius Mims. This was one of the picks I got dead on in my mock draft, my final mock, and I felt good about it. If you look at what the Bengals covet, it's monster size at offensive tackle. That's why they traded for Orlando Brown Jr., right? It's why they signed Trent Brown. They love size and athleticism at offensive tackle. I know Orlando Brown Jr. not the freakiest athlete, right? But Amarius Mims is. And even though he's very inexperienced, he's not really that raw when you watch him on film. He was one of the more fun offensive tackles to watch in this class, and he was dominant at times. Didn't get starting experience until college football playoff time, really, in 2022, and did a really, really good job near the end of the season. And then of what he did play in 2023 was really, really solid. Injuries have been a bit of a problem, but this has to potentially be a great pickup for the Bengals. Trent Brown's only on a 1-year deal. You got to remember that. 1-year deal. Amarius Mims has potential to come in and be a starter in 2025 and is good enough right now to play if there's an injury to either Orlando Brown Jr. or Trent Brown. I love the pickup for the Bengals. In the second round, they took Chris Jenkins. Top 50 player for me. Really good athlete on the interior defensive line. Has pass rush upside and is already good against the run. He's not your DJ Reader replacement. He is more of your prototypical 4-3 defensive tackle. Your 3 technique. He's not really going to play over the center very much. Or I would not expect that, especially at 299, even 300 pounds, right? In the third round, Jermaine Burton could end up being a pretty nice player. He had a real knack for getting open. He's got really good speed. Georgia transfer, former high 4-star or 5-star receiver, commit to Georgia before transferring to Alabama. He's maybe got some off-the-field stuff and some character stuff, but the tape's really good, and he would have been more productive if Jalen Milroe was a little bit more consistent at Alabama. Burton didn't really have too many big games, But when they made him the featured target, it was clear he was the best receiver on the field for Alabama. Even with Isaiah Bond there, I love the potential of Isaiah Bond. Thought Burton was a little bit better on film, and I hope Isaiah Bond dominates for Texas. But Burton was a really, really good player last year for Bama. Just didn't really produce as much as he could have if maybe somebody else was playing quarterback, maybe in a different offensive scheme. But he knows how to get open, and even with the uncertainty around T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd might not be back in Cincinnati, so Jermaine Burton can come in and compete to play very, very soon. He is good already. McKinley Jackson was somebody that got hype early in the process, kind of lost a little bit of steam. He's got big size. I would think of him more as like your DJ Reader replacement. He's just going to be that space eater. Not going to be quite the player that DJ Reader was. It's really tough to be that good, but McKinley Jackson is someone that maybe can evolve into that same role. That's what you're hoping for when you take a player like that in the third round, even if at the end. Eric All. Eric All is intriguing. He's good after the catch. He's a good athlete, and you worry about the injury stuff with him, but he's got good size at 6'4", 250, a transfer from Michigan. He's a really, really good player, and again, has starter upside here in the fourth round. You really can't be too mad about that. The athletic profile is quite good. Josh Newton, I feel like I keep saying this, was another guy that, was hyped up coming into the year. Didn't really have the year that people wanted from him. I think he's a former receiver, and that does show up with the ball skills, but just wasn't quite as good as you would have wanted in 2023, and that's why he's not a first or second round pick, and he goes in the fifth. But maybe a good special teamer, someone that could rotate in potentially as well. I'm not sure if he's going to end up being a starter for Cincinnati, but the possibility is there. He's got to get back to his 2022 self and get back on the right track. Tanner McLaughlin, really interesting. I think this ended up being Daniel Jeremiah's tight end too. I think I saw something about that. He might have put out a tweet or something really hyping up Tanner McLaughlin, and it's not hard when you watch him because he's got juice. He's got ability after the catch. He also obviously is NFL size at 6'5", 245. So, back-to-back good tight end pickups for the Bengals with good athletes with good upside as well. I like these picks a lot better than I like the Drew Sample pick a few years ago. Cedric Johnson's another decent athlete here. 6'3", 260, tested quite well, and could end up joining the defensive line rotation. I'll have to see how Miles Murphy ends up developing, but with Trey Hendrickson requesting a trade, Cedric Johnson could be more valuable than ever, but you get to these picks deep into day 3. Probably will never become starters, but you have potential. Like Matt Lee, for example, is a solid pass protecting center that I could see end up being a starter. Maybe not within 1 or 2 years, but if there's an injury somewhere in his development, you might feel good about him, going into the starting role. But yeah, likely not as a rookie, but a good 7th round pick. I'm going to give the Browns just a flat B. I don't want to ding them too hard because I like the players they got, but of course they didn't really have too many picks and didn't have too many high picks. But I like the players they got. Michael Hall Jr. has flashed as a pass rusher, but it's just about staying consistent. He is one of the best interior defensive linemen in this class in terms of actually getting after the quarterback. Is he a 3-down player? That's going to end up being the question with him. But man, is he a good pass rusher with really strong hands, and that's going to be valuable. Defensive tackles that can get after the QB are valuable, and deep in the second round, I like keeping him in state and making him a Brown, and of course you needed more pass rush on the interior anyways. In the third round, you took Zach Zinter, who is a super high character guy, big time team leader, mauler in the run game, and when you look at the Browns here, it's tough to picture when he would actually see the field, because you of course have a Joel Bitonio, you have Wyatt Teller. Zach Zinter is, at least an insurance policy, but could end up becoming a starter if there's an injury, if Wyatt Teller is not retained. I mean, Joel Bitonio is getting up there in age as well. So he could end up being a starter for them, clearly. But, I'm not sure when that's going to be exactly. Jamari Thrash, though, what a pick here. Deep into the 5th round, Jamari Thrash is a beast. It was a monster receiver class. And Thrash is certainly maybe the Browns are the beneficiary of that, because Thrash falls to them here deep into the 5th round. He's a good route runner with good speed, and I could see him being a playmaker for Cleveland, maybe as a 4th receiver somewhere in his rookie deal. It's at the very least good depth to have. Nathaniel Watson, was another one of those players I just didn't end up getting to watch, but everyone has talked about his ability as a tackler. Leading the SEC in tackles is obviously pretty impressive, but of course it does matter where those tackles happen. Imagine he's more of a special teams player or depth. But Miles Harden is somebody that I didn't know about prior to the combine, and then he tested really well, and I was able to find him and watch him and was pretty impressed. Now, he was playing at South Dakota, so it's not really top tier competition, but as I've said before with corner, I think it's less about who you're playing at times and more about what you actually look like moving in space, what your technique is like. And Miles Harden is a very intriguing player, so I am interested to see what his development ends up being like. But based on the athletic profile and the physicality that people talk about, impact special teamer, and then Juwan Briggs, I also did not get a chance to watch. So, rotational defensive lineman at best. We'll see if he even makes the team. I'm also going to give the Cowboys a B. I think they did a decent job. People have kind of already trashed this because, hey, look at Dak Prescott. He doesn't have any weapons. It's just CeeDee Lamb. Well, we also have some good tight ends in the room. Jake Ferguson, Brandon Cooks is still there. I get that maybe you wanted more, but I don't know that the opportunity was there when you look at where the Cowboys' needs actually were. And taking Tyler Guyton at 29, I like for them. They needed tackle desperately. Guyton's a really good athlete, and I think has a chance to go over and play left tackle for them, and you could leave Tyler Smith at left guard, where he's becoming an all-pro type player. I like this pick for Dallas because Guyton does have pretty phenomenal upside, and of the tackles in this class, he's somebody that has tremendous upside and probable starter potential right away. It's, again, tough to find that, and I think they were able to, even though there was a big run of tackles. Marshawn Kneeland, another player I liked. You lose Dorrance Armstrong Jr. Kneeland is someone that I thought could end up sneaking into the 1st round. Super high effort guy, super powerful guy, and you lose Dorrance Armstrong Jr., as I mentioned. It's important to get another guy in the mix. I think the Cowboys have really thrived in the past several years with all of their depth off the edge. And you can think about all the different players they've had between not only, we know Micah Parsons and Marcus Lawrence, but think about Randy Gregory. Think about Dorrance Armstrong Jr. Think about Dante Fowler Jr. They've had a bunch of different solid guys that can come in and play and give them something. And Marshawn Kneeland is certainly no exception. Cooper Beebe in the 3rd round. I'm a big Cooper Beebe guy. He's really good in space. He's a mauler. I love how he's a finisher as a blocker, and that kind of goes with the mauling thing, and has positional flexibility because he started at a number of different positions in his career at Kansas State. I like those types of players. I didn't love the Maris Lufau pick. I thought it was not only a little bit early, but I don't know what he's going to do, because I look at the Cowboys and I look at the skill set of Maris Lufau, and I talked about this in a video I uploaded a couple days ago, and I just see, okay, you drafted DeMar Van Overshown, you have Marquise Bell. What is Maris Lufau going to do when his best strength is as a spot dropper or like a tight end eraser? I don't really know. Kalen Carson in the 5th. I know a lot of people are pretty high on him. Carson is, to me, going to be an outside corner. I don't know what his role is going to be within the Cowboys. I don't know how soon he's going to find the field, but he's a solid player, and I would say that it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up being a starter under his rookie contract, but they got a lot of depth at corner already, and maybe you're not able to retain Trevon Diggs long-term. Deron Bland is certainly a decent player. You have Jordan Lewis as your slot corner. I guess it's not like they're losing. They don't have Stephon Gilmore anymore. Maybe it's not as deep as I thought, but I still, he's obviously not going to come in and play right away. That's obvious, especially as a 5th round pick, right? But, he's someone that could end up being a starter at some point in his rookie deal. So, see what happens there. A lot of people really like Ryan Flournoy from Southeast Missouri State. Didn't find out about him until the combine. Tested quite well. Probable special teamer. Maybe ends up working into the rotation as a receiver. And then they grab Justin Rogers and Nathan Thomas for depth in the trenches. I'm going to give the Broncos a B-. I, of course, don't love the value of Bo Nix at 12. Some people really love Bo Nix. I thought Bo Nix was pretty good. I don't think his accuracy was quite as good as his completion percentage would indicate. And he really didn't stretch the field very often at Oregon at all. Of course, did sometimes. Troy Franklin, big-time deep threat, but a lot of his work came underneath. And that does set up the deep ball. But I was impressed with Bo Nix's development from Auburn to Oregon. How could you not be? Just didn't really think he was worth it at 12. He was the 6th quarterback taken in the top 12 picks. And I can't fault the Broncos for that. They apparently really like Bo Nix. But, of course, they were between a rock and a hard place, right? They needed a quarterback. They wanted a QB. All the QBs were off the board at this point. It was either Bo Nix or Spencer Rattler. And they weren't going to take Rattler here in the first round, obviously. And they didn't have a second-round pick. They were stuck. Nix may have been a Raider at 13 if they didn't take Bo Nix here. So if he becomes a solid starter for you, and he will probably be the starting quarterback day one in Denver, this ends up looking like a pretty good pick. But quarterback is a really tough position, and we'll see what the development looks like. I thought that Sean Payton had a decent chance to turn Russell Wilson's career back around. Didn't happen. I still think he could make Bo Nix a really solid player. We'll have to see if it happens or if he's just a Drew Brees merchant, right? In the third round, Jonah Ellis was the pick. I like Jonah Ellis. I just wonder if he's not a designated pass rusher, DPR. I don't know that he's really a three-down player, but he is instinctive. He is a high motor type player, and he's a really solid pass rusher overall. And, again, I don't know if he's going to play 3 downs for Denver, but at least coming in on third down, he can make an impact, and you needed to get more on the edge. But if he developed overall, it wouldn't shock me if he ended up becoming a 3-down player. So we have to see. Then they grabbed Troy Franklin at the top of the 4th round, and you can't hate this at this point. This is one of the more ridiculous comparisons I've probably ever seen. How is Troy Franklin Deontay Johnson? I'll never know. Troy Franklin is not a very good route runner. His route tree is limited. I'm not sure he tracks the football as well down the field for a deep threat, but he is certainly fast. He can certainly get down the field and has been a big-time playmaker for the Ducks. How do you compare that to the route technician that Deontay Johnson is? I have no idea. But yeah, Troy Franklin, big-time deep threat that pairing him back up with Bo Nix. This is awesome here at the top of the 4th round. In the 5th, Chris Abrams-Drain ended up being the selection, and I really, really like him as a player. I love that ESPN had him as a top 100 guy. I think he probably ends up playing the nickel at the next level, but this is someone who's twitchy at times. The GPS speed times are crazy. He's awesome against the run. He's a really, really fun player, and I think has starting slot corner upside soon. Audric Estime was the 5th round pick of the Denver Broncos, and he's a good player. Did not run very well at the combine, did better at his pro day, but I didn't really see speed being a huge problem on tape. It's not really a big strength of his, obviously. He's a big downhill runner, power back, 5'11", 221, and you can certainly see the value of that here in the 5th round. It's if Javonte Williams gets hurt, Estime is a nice guy to bring in and replace him and play that role. You obviously have some good receiving backs in there as well still. Devon Vele out of Utah offers pretty awesome size and speed. Sounds like a gunner to me. And then Nick Gargiulo, I didn't really know. They talked about him as a hockey player on the broadcast. I didn't really get to watch him, of course. The South Carolina offensive line wasn't very good. So I guess I did see him, but didn't watch him specifically. I don't really have much of an opinion. I'm going to give the Lions an A-. Another really strong grade for another really strong draft class. They moved up to get Terrion Arnold, and I think the Packers absolutely would have drafted him at 25 if the Lions didn't jump them. Arnold was arguably the best corner in this draft. He's definitely technically the best, and he's great against the run. Just not quite the same level of athlete that Quinyon Mitchell was, but he's a really, really solid player. I love watching Terrion Arnold. He was a pest against Texas, shutting down different screens and run plays, and he's just so disciplined, so instinctive, knows exactly where the ball is going to be. Just is not some explosive, twitchy athlete, but at 24, he is a great pickup for a probable top 15 player in the class. And took another good corner in Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Feels like another Lions type, bite your kneecaps off type player. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. is not the biggest guy ever, but he plays big. He plays physically. He's a really good athlete on film as well. And it's tough to hate this at the end of the second round. I think the Lions got 2 starting boundary corners, and they don't really even need them at the moment. They don't need 2, but they're going to get 2. Carlton Davis is not going to be a long-term solution. Amik Robertson was never going to play the boundary. Emmanuel Mosley's good depth. But you have your starting boundary duo of the future in Rakestraw and Terrion Arnold, and you got them at 24 and at the end of the second round, respectively. This was a great start. Giovanni Manu, I had heard of out of British Columbia, Canada, international program, 6'8", 350, and the Lions are clearly trying to do the same thing that the Eagles did with Jordan Mailata. Is that going to happen? It's tough to say. This was not a player I watched, obviously, but I've heard he's quite athletic, and obviously the size is no joke if you can develop him. And the Lions moved up to get him, by the way. Sione Vaki was announced as a running back, which is a very interesting thing. He's probably best as a running back. I mean, that's where he kind of broke out on the scene against Utah. I guess this is like your core special teams type guy. He's going to make an impact on kickoff. He'll probably make an impact on kick return, on punt team. I mean, Sione Vaki is somebody that is just a football guy. There's not really another way to say it. And then Mekhi Wingo in the 6th. This is awesome. Another really good pass rusher. Undersized defensive tackle, but a ton of juice on the interior. You look at what they needed, it was a guy like Mekhi Wingo. Of course, they tried to do something similar with Levi Onwuzurike a few years ago, like a true pass rushing 3-tech. Injuries kind of held him back. And you look at what they have there now, it's big boys. DJ Reader, Aleem McNeil. Get a smaller guy that can really get after the QB on 3rd and long. Love it for Detroit. And then I don't know what happened with the fall of Christian Mahogany. He went way too late. For one of the better guards in this class. Big, powerful guy. New Jersey guy, so he's tough. If that has anything to do with anything. But Christian Mahogany, I could not believe was available at this point. Compensatory pick in the 6th round. I mean, he's basically a 7th round pick. One of the best guards in the draft. I get it wasn't an extremely strong class for interior offensive linemen, but I don't know how he lasts this long. There had to be some type of medical red flag. I don't know how he's available at the 7th round, basically. I'm going to give the Packers a B+. I liked their draft overall. I think they got a bunch of really solid players, especially in the secondary. Let's talk about it. Jordan Morgan, I thought was going to be somebody that moved inside to play guard. Man, I do not see the Christian Darrisaw comp with him at all. But he is athletic. He is powerful. He has a problem with oversetting. That can be corrected with coaching maybe, but oftentimes a player will overset because they're worried about speed, which leaves you open to the inside move, which can be a really, really big problem, especially if you're on an island as a tackle, as your left side, blind side protector. That can be a little bit tough, but he is quite athletic. He moves well, and even though he's got shorter arms, he certainly is quite strong. That's part of the reason why you might expect him to move inside to guard. Sub 34-inch arms, that's typically what happens. But he's athletic enough to where I think he can stick a tackle, and it was a need for Green Bay. It was a need for them. So I didn't think Goody would take an offensive lineman in the first, just typically not what he does, but it happened this time around, and Jordan Morgan is a good player. And so is Edgerrin Cooper. He was LB2 for me in the draft. He is extremely explosive. He is a fun blitzer. He's able to stack and shed blocks. He's not your typical undersized speed linebacker that isn't good against the run. It's just about getting more reps for him, I think, and getting his processing speed up. He's not really going to be your Mike linebacker. I think he's more of a Will, and I don't know what's going to happen with Quay Walker. Is he going to play Mike in 2024? It'll be interesting to see what the Packers do, but this seemed like a Packers pick. It really, really did. That's why I had it mocked the Packers in my second round mock draft, right, that got posted after the first round. Just seems like a Packers type player with his athletic profile and his skill set. So kind of a no-brainer there. And I love Javon Bullard. Yeah, he was definitely in play for the number 1 safety in the draft. I had him as a top 50 player. I think he's a nickel/safety. He's really, really solid in coverage and is definitely not afraid to come down and hit. I think his best role would be in the slot, but teaming up with Xavier McKinney in the back end for Green Bay could be very, very interesting because I think McKinney would really be best served as a strong safety, even though played free safety at a high level for the Giants. I can't help but look back to the player at Alabama and how good he was playing in the box. And Bullard, even though he's great against the run, is not really a box safety. So it'll be interesting to see if he plays in the nickel or over the top. I would say he might be looking at nickel corner based on all the other safeties that the Packers brought in within this class. In the end of the 3rd round, they grabbed Marshawn Lloyd, transfer from South Carolina to USC. He's got very good size at 220 pounds. Obviously, another low center of gravity guy at just 5'9". Runs strong, runs hard, has pretty decent speed in there as well. Sub 4.5 at the combine, and that's evident on tape. He's not like crazy fast, but it's definitely good speed, and it's a nice change of pace guy to add with Josh Jacobs, so I like that pick. Tyron Hopper from Mizzou. Did not end up getting a chance to watch him, but he's only 6'2", 230 pounds. Is not super explosive. I don't know what his role is going to end up being. This felt like kind of a weird pick at the end of the 3rd round. I guess he's going to be a special teams guy, but do you value that guy at the end of the 3rd round? Maybe you do. Evan Williams kind of profiles to be another special teamer. Really, really good athlete. I wonder if he ends up working his way into being a starter at the back end for Green Bay. It's a possibility, I guess. Jacob Monk from Duke. I was kind of surprised to see him go ahead of some of the other centers like Matt Lee, but it's certainly not super weird. Matt Lee ended up being a 7th round pick, obviously. And Jacob Monk, again, never a bad idea to have more depth on the O-line. Keaton Oladapo is a really fun box safety. He's really not afraid to come up and hit. That's certainly his best ability, is coming up and laying the wood on ball carriers. He is a beast. And that's a really, really fun player, kind of like a hybrid linebacker in a way with Keaton Oladapo. And then, of course, some really interesting picks down the board. My favorite one was undoubtedly Michael Pratt, because I think if there's an injury to Jordan Love, Michael Pratt is a really good backup to have. Doesn't have elite arm talent or anything, and his 2022 tape was a lot better than 2023, but he can be a good player and tremendous value in the 7th round. A lot better than Sean Clifford in the 5th round for me, that's for sure. And then Kalen King, I think, probably moves back to safety. Not the best athlete. He got torched in 2023, got torched at the Senior Bowl. But in the 7th round, fine. I'm going to give the Texans a B. Another draft that I liked. Kicking things off with Kamari Lassiter, top 50 player for me. He is quicker than fast. Not tremendous deep speed or anything, but he's got great ball skills. He's physical. He's competitive. Definitely really quick feet and good hips as well. And what do we mean by that? Good hips. Clean hips, quick turns, fluid. It's not, nothing's really forced and slow and janky looking. Just clean and fluid. And he looks like a corner, right? Not tremendous speed. That's really is one downfall. But certainly going to stay on the outside. Really, really like Kamari Lassiter. Just, again, lacks top-tier speed. That is the big thing. Blake Fisher, end of the 2nd round. Athletic developmental tackle. He's a really, really good athlete with starter upside if he's properly developed. Right tackle's a weird position for Houston. Titus Howard's played tackle and guard. Feels like they can't figure out what he's going to do. And while he is going to be their starting right tackle in 2024, based off the past couple of seasons, Blake Fisher is someone I think that can grow into that role. Howard has never been, the 1st round pick type guy that you would have wanted him to be. Kalen Bullock's an interesting player. He's very good over the top. Very rangy, very good speed. He is not a good tackler at all. He's capable of flying downhill and making some plays in the run game, but a lot of missed tackles from what I saw. It was a very bad USC defense, but he certainly is quite good over the top. Cade Stover at tight end. Reliable, willing blocker with good hands. Reliable, solid player. I love him as a tight end too, or 3 in an offense. Jamal Hill from Oregon. Not a player I watched. I don't know. Special teams for Jamal Hill, maybe. Really couldn't say much about him. Moved from defensive back to inside linebacker in 2024. But below average speed for a linebacker. Or below average size for a linebacker. I was saying move from safety. It has a below average speed for a linebacker. I just can't read. Sound tackler with excellent speed. Just below average fluidity for a safety. It's an interesting bill. Sounds like a special teamer to me. Jawar Jordan. Explosive running back for Louisville. Undersized, but big play waiting to happen. I like him as a rotational back. He's a fun player. Really, really explosive. Solomon Byrd from USC. He really could be something. I will see if he ends up making the roster. But really strong and powerful hands. And someone that was actually a pleasant surprise when I watched him. But not always a big-time playmaker for USC. Their defense, again, was horrendous. Marcus Harris and Ladarius Henderson in the trenches ended up finishing their draft off. I'm going to give the Indianapolis Colts an A. They had a really, really good draft. Laiatu Latu kicked things off at 15. He was my favorite player in the draft. I think he's going to be a heck of a pro. He's got tremendous hands. He can go to different counter moves successfully. If the first thing doesn't work, bang, bang. Has a bunch of different options. Really high motor player. Really good at getting to the quarterback. Bendy enough. He is constantly beating offensive linemen as a pass rusher, and that's what you want. He's a really, really good player with NFL size at 6'5", 260. Not tremendous length, and you worry about the injury stuff with him. He had to medically retire, but I was really happy to see Laiatu Latu go this high in the draft. Because I was wondering, I'm like, okay, does he end up being a first-round pick? Does he end up falling out of the first round with the medical stuff? But things came back clean and clear and under control, and I like that for Laiatu Latu, who I absolutely loved in 2022. And, of course, I hyped him up plenty in 2023 as we worked through the draft process. And then Adonai Mitchell in the second round, pick 52. What an incredible selection for the Colts. Adonai Mitchell was a top 25 player for me. Obviously, big Texas fan. Hook 'em. Adonai Mitchell has size, speed. He tested faster than he played at Texas, probably. He was more fluid than explosive at Texas. But he's a long strider, so he can get on you and get by you in a hurry. He is a really solid route runner who goes up and plucks the football out of the air. And he doesn't really offer much after the catch. And I would say that his big concern is, all right, is he going to dog routes where he's not in the progression? Is he going to show low effort if he's not going to be one of the first reads? That was the thing at Texas. But in terms of upside, it is unbelievable with Adonai Mitchell. The size, speed profile with the route running and the hands. He's a really fun player. Really, really fun player. Matt Gonsalves of Pitt was their pick in the third round. Big offensive tackle with athleticism. And, of course, Chris Ballard, we know. They draft good athletes. Gonsalves fits the bill. And I wonder with shorter arms if he ends up moving inside to guard. But we'll see. It's good depth on the O-line. See what their plan is. Because they did draft a guard here in Tanner Bortolini. Of course, played center at Wisconsin, but I believe was drafted as a guard. He's really quick. He's tested off the charts. And I talked about that in my best picks of day 3 video, or one of the biggest steals, one of those. I really like the Tanner Bortolini pickup. And yeah, this is a team that it makes sense for. More depth on the O-line, potential starter after Ryan Kelly. Tanner Bortolini's a great athlete with exceptional quickness, and that's really important for interior offensive linemen that are going to have to pull. They're going to have to do really a lot of work out in space. Anthony Gold out of Oregon State. Fun special teams value. Slot receiver that can really win down the field. He can be a deep threat. But most of his impact will be as a return man, I would have to bet. Jalen Carley's out of Mizzou. Another fun player with big size and speed. Probable special teams player that could end up working into a starting role. And I also really like Jalen Simpson. Simpson's got great instincts and coverage, and that made him one of the better safeties in this class. And another guy that I think will provide impact on special teams, but could work his way into being a starter. If you look at the safety depth for the Colts, it is not exceptional right now. And then they finish things off with Micah Abraham from Marshall, or a corner who I did not watch, of course, and Jonah Laulu from Oklahoma, defensive tackle, who I never watched either. I've seen him play, of course, playing for Oklahoma, but I did not watch him specifically. I'm going to give the Jaguars a B. I like what they did. They traded down and still got Brian Thomas Jr. He's a great fit into their offense. Man, I don't really see the T. Higgins comp with him either. Brian Thomas Jr. has exceptional explosiveness and downfield speed. He really can go up and get the football as well, but he's doing most of his work as a deep threat. The route tree is not super advanced for Brian Thomas Jr. It's a lot of just deep stuff, a lot of streaks, and then he'll work off the streak with, comebacks and things like that. The LSU offense was very vertical, and Brian Thomas Jr. took total advantage of that, had like 17 touchdowns this past season, led all of college football. It was pretty incredible what he was able to do, and part of that is Malik Neighbors taking some of the heat away from Brian Thomas Jr., but he would have been wide receiver 1 and productive, I think, on any team in the nation. He's an incredible player. Mason Smith, another LSU player here in the top 50. I think he was the number 48 pick. Mason Smith has high upside. If you watched him in 2022, you'd be like, this is a top 10 pick, or like I did. Like, the upside is incredible. He's a great athlete. Got injured, didn't come back from the injury as dominant in 2023, and that is a problem, but has obvious NFL size at 6'5", 306. And if he can get back to what he was looking like in 2022, I mean, this guy's going to be an unbelievable player, but it wasn't there in 2023, so it's a bit of a gamble. I love Jerry Jones. I think he's going to be a nickel corner at the next level. A really good athlete, really feisty player. As I've said before, any FSU corner in this class, I'm in. Jerry Jones, I love. Bernardo Green, I love for different reasons. But Jones is a really good slot corner in a really good slot corner class. I didn't think this was a reach at all. I think he is a really solid player. Taking him at the start of the 4th round, I think would have been fine value. They take him at the very end of the 3rd. Like, this is fine value for Jerry Jones. I thought he's one of the better corners in the class, but of course, he's going to be playing the nickel for me. And you look at the Jags, they needed help at corner. Does that force Jerry Jones to the boundary? It'll be interesting to see if that's where his ultimate role ends up being. Javon Foster from Mizzou is a high upside offensive tackle with good athleticism, good depth on the O-line. Maybe ends up being a starter. If there's an injury, obviously, that could move up the timeline a little bit. Jordan Jefferson, another LSU player here. I wasn't a huge fan of his when I watched him. I thought he was not nearly as good as Mekhi Wingo, who consistently popped more on film. But he's got more size than Wingo. He's just not nearly the same pass rusher. So it'll be interesting to see what he ends up being. DeAndre Prince from Ole Miss, another good athlete with the ability to potentially stay on the outside as well. It'll be interesting to see if he becomes more than just a special teams player. Another great special teamer is Keelan Robinson from Texas. Great return man and offers ability as a receiver out of the backfield. But he is a return man and was a dominant one at Texas. He was a kick returner, Xavier Worthy return punts. But Robinson, really, really good return man. Great special teams value. Cam Little bring in a kicker. And then Miles Cole wrapped up their class. Miles Cole ended up testing really well with super freak size. He's somebody to watch. In the 7th round, you take a chance on a player like this. I'm giving the Kansas City Chiefs an A-. I thought they killed it. They took chances on high upside players, and they also grabbed high floor guys that are going to be good down the board. I think it's tough to do a lot better than the Chiefs did, but some teams had great drafts, in my opinion. We'll kick things off with Xavier Worthy from Texas. Obviously, it's easy to say, oh, this guy's small. He's a track guy. He doesn't have NFL capability. He's not just a track guy. If you watch Xavier Worthy and come up with, oh, he's just a fast deep threat, you didn't actually watch him. because he's not just a guy that works down the field. In fact, that was often not what he was doing at Texas. He was working underneath. He's incredible after the catch. Play speed isn't anything crazy. You know, he goes down at first contact a lot, but oftentimes he doesn't let you touch him. Has big home run ability, just not always down the field. People will talk about the drops. He played with a broken hand in 2022. Didn't really drop the ball much in 2023. His drops, though, however, are what are typically not classified as drops. It's when he's in contested catch situations, other receivers might catch the football. He typically in traffic is not going to bring it in. He doesn't have especially big hands, and his ability in those contested catch in traffic spots just isn't great. That's not really his game, but that wasn't Jordan Addison's game either. If you can get open and you have the speed to do so, you're going to be an impactful player. I think Worthy is a very underrated route runner. He's good at getting open underneath. I don't know why I've heard that he's not this very, great route runner, because he is twitchy and fast, and it's not like he struggles to sink his hips and gets open. He does that at a high level. So, I thought he was definitely worthy of being a first-round selection. He was an amazing return man at Texas, and he tracks the deep ball well. Didn't so much in 2022. It was weird for him in 2022. But came out in 2023, was Texas clear wide receiver one, even with Adonai Mitchell in there, even though I think Mitchell might be a slightly better NFL prospect because of the size and speed profile. Worthy's obviously incredibly athletic, and I think he's more of a Hollywood Brown type guy, more than Deshaun Jackson. But Worthy has exceptional ability, and it will be interesting to see what happens with him and Patrick Mahomes. I am excited. Kingsley Suamataia, I think, has a ton of potential. He ended up being a top 50 player in the draft for me, with experience starting at both left and right tackle. He might end up being best as a guard, but with the Chiefs, you're going to end up looking at a tackle with him. They need tackle. He's got size. Cousin of Penei Sewell, very interesting player. But again, has flashed to an unbelievable level. Just overpowering athletic explosiveness. Just needs more refinement as a player, and I think that will come over time. And Jared Wiley's another explosive freak athlete at nearly 6'7", 250 pounds, that can really go up and get the football. He's a really, really fun player. Transferred from Texas, Hook'em Horns. I get it. Wasn't going to play with Jatavion Sanders. He goes to TCU. I don't hold it against him. He's a really, really fun player to watch with high upside. He scares me going to the Chiefs, because if his development is what I think it could be, he is going to be a monster player for Kansas City. Jaden Hicks in the fourth. I don't know how he's available. I really don't. He was a top 50 player for me. I think I had him at like 44, something in that range. He is great in the box. He's really athletic. He can play over the top. He can come down and hit. He can erase tight ends. He's got great ball skills. I don't know how this guy is available at the end of the fourth round. Another steal for the Chiefs as far as I'm concerned. And I think Hunter Norzad deep into the fifth is great value. He is incredibly smart by all accounts. Cornell guy. Yeah, somebody told me Harvard, but it's Cornell. Of course, I didn't watch him there. I only know him as a Penn State guy, but incredibly smart. He can call the offense and identify at the line, and moves pretty well in space. Is strong enough. I know, Brandon Thorne, who's an offensive line guru. Hunter Norzad was one of his guys. This is a really, really solid player. Good depth on the O-line. And they would round out the class with Kamal Haddon from Tennessee, good size at corner. And CJ Hansen, a guard from Holy Cross. Didn't get to watch him, of course. And I am going to give the Chargers an A. I think they did a really great job in the draft. Joe Alt was the right pick for them at number 5. Jim Harbaugh says, listen, offensive linemen are playmakers. Alt's got exceptional size and athleticism. He's got very decent length as well. And based off 2023 film, I think was the best tackle in the draft. He goes at number 5. They're going to kick him over to right tackle. And he is not the wrong pick here. I know Chargers fans wanted a wide receiver. It is a stacked receiver class. You're not going to find Joe Alt in the second round the way you can find a big-time receiver in the second round. And I think they did that. Joe Alt has the potential to be a franchise cornerstone tackle for the Chargers, and now you have Alt at right tackle, Rashawn Slater at left tackle. That's a really, really good start to an offensive line. You know, their interior is a bit of a different story. We'll see if Zion Johnson's able to develop. But tackle is now going to be set, right? And then Ladd McConkey in the second round. This is the type of player I wanted the Panthers to take because McConkey is so good at getting open. He's got such exceptional deep speed. He's not just a crafty route runner. I heard somebody say he's like Wes Welker. Have you ever seen him play? It's pretty insane. Now, yes, he can play in the slot, but he can also play outside. He can play the Z while Quentin Johnston, I guess, ends up being the X. Need Johnson to end up developing. But McConkey is so good at getting open. He is so fast. He's got good hands. And he stay healthy. But he is a beast of a player. And he's good after the catch. Ladd McConkey was a first-round talent that ended up being available at the top of the second round. Chargers moved up to get him. This is a great player for Justin Herbert. What's better to you? Right? And you tell me if you think this is true. Joe Alt at 5 and Ladd McConkey in the second round, or Malik Neighbors at 5, or Rome Odunze, right? And Patrick Paul, or Kingsley Suamataia, or Blake Fisher in the second round. If you were moving to take a tackle over Trey Pipkins, who needed to be upgraded, I don't care what his contract says, needed to be upgraded, Joe Alt was the pick, and then fire back in a stacked receiver class. Why were people being dumb about this? I get Neighbors can be some type of generational playmaker and is especially great after the catch. Ladd McConkey, if he is 95% of what Neighbors can do, 90% even, it is worth it when you can get Joe Alt at 5. Come on, guys. At Junior Colson in the third round, you guys know how I feel about Junior Colson. Top 30 player in the draft for me. If you saw my big board, I've hyped him up. He's been in multiple best picks of the NFL draft videos that I've done. He is super athletic with great size. He came into the combine around 240, but his playing weight was listed somewhere closer to 250. And he was, even if he's 238, this is great size at linebacker for a modern linebacker. And it's not like, oh, well, you know, he's a big linebacker, he's a thumper, he's going to come down and play the run really well, but that's about it. And he does do that really well, but he's got sideline-to-sideline speed, and he is great in coverage. What a stud player. You know, you hear Jim Harbaugh talk about Junior Colson. You hear, you know, everyone say he's going to be a green dot type player, call the defense. Junior Colson in the third round, how is he available? I don't get it, but great pickup. I know linebackers undervalued nowadays, but that can be a valuable piece to a defense. You know, the Legion of Boom with the Seahawks, great secondary, all-time great defense, but is it as good if they don't have Bobby Wagner in that mix? I don't think so. And obviously you can go back and point to the impact that Ray Lewis has made, Fred Warner nowadays with the 49ers. A really good middle linebacker is really valuable. And I don't know what I'm missing that Junior Colson ends up being a third-round pick, and I think he's a top 30 player in the entire draft. Justin Aboigbe from Bama, good size on the interior for a pass-rushing interior defensive lineman. Not going to play nose tackle for the Chargers. They needed more depth. They needed more depth on the interior, and Aboigbe offers you that possibility. Tarheeb Still at corner from Maryland. I know a lot of people liked him. I didn't really get a chance to look at him too much, so you'll have to fill me down in the comment section below. You know, obviously I've looked into him, but you know, other than good ball skills, it's been tough to pinpoint too much about him. So good special teams value, rotational DB in the secondary, but the corner I liked more was Cam Hart. He's got great size. His DB coach or secondary coach at Notre Dame is, guess where now? With the Chargers, so he gets to reunite with him. Offers tremendous size and physicality at corner. He's got pretty good speed as well. I thought he was going to go a lot earlier than round 5 and is a great fit with the Chargers. And so is Kamani Vidal. As for where his landing spot could be, it's tough to find a better spot than with the Chargers. You look at the way that offense looked with Blake Corum. I like Kamani Vidal to have a Blake Corum type role with the Chargers. I think he can be their main running back. He might be their best running back right now over Austin Eckler, over Gus Edwards. Kamani Vidal is going to contribute, I think, sooner than a lot of people might expect for a 6th round pick. He's a really nice player. Brendan Rice out of USC. Very strong receiver. Struggles to get open. That's why he's available, I think. He's just not really someone that gets open at an elite level. And, we'll see if that changes. Can he improve as a route runner? You'd hope so with that last name and with his dad, but he's got potential. He's a good athlete. So we'll see. And then Cornelius Johnson. Of course, you knew Jim Harbaugh couldn't just get one Michigan guy. Had to go up and get another. And that was Cornelius Johnson as a receiver. Clearly likes him as a guy. And that's why you take a chance on him here at the end of the 7th round to bring him into the locker room. A little familiarity in there as well. Potentially special teams impact as a gunner also. I thought the Rams did a decent job. I'm going to give them a B. Jared Verse at 19, I think he's just sticking and picking and maybe taking the best player available. Jared Verse is a big, strong, physical, powerful edge rusher with, again, really powerful hands and tested well. He's a good athlete. That was not a surprise. He's a really good player, and the Rams needed help off the edge. Braden Fisk, I wish they didn't move up all the way to get him. Took him at number 39 overall. They gave up a 2nd round pick next year to do it. It was a lot to move up, but they clearly wanted to upgrade at defensive tackle, and there was a big run on defensive tackle at the start of the 2nd round, and it looks like they may have panicked a little bit. And Fisk is a really good player. Shorter arms, and, if you look at what his role is going to be, he's going to have to play 5-tech or 4-eye. And I'm not sure if his skill set and the arm length kind of fits that. So I really thought he was going to end up being a 3-tech. And, I've seen AJ Schulte, who's a big Rams guy, talked about Fisk's role. And he's a little bit skeptical about whether or not Braden Fisk is a great fit with the Rams. Clearly, they have a plan when they traded up to go get him. He's explosive. He's got a high motor. But the short arms might end up limiting his effectiveness, and his fit within the Rams is a little questionable. Blake Corum in the 3rd ends up being pretty good value. He's not very fast, but is really quick. Has great vision, has great ability to get out into the open field, great patience. He's a really, really solid player. Competition, I guess, for Kyron Williams, another guy in the mix. Corum's a nice player. Again, not going to blow you away with breakaway speed at all, but is definitely quick, is definitely a patient runner with great vision, and can definitely, bounce things out and be effective as a runner. Contact balance is the name of the game with Blake Corum. Cam Kinchens at the end of the 3rd round. Wasn't too high on Kinchens in the end. I don't think he's like Javon Holland at all. He's not a tremendous athlete. He's not a tremendous tackler. He's got pretty good range due to his instincts. We'll have to see what he ends up doing. Cam Curl, of course, in Los Angeles now with the Rams. Kinchens, he was a playmaker at Miami. We'll have to see what he ends up doing with the Rams in the NFL. Brennan Jackson, nice player, powerful edge rusher, and offers a little bit in the run game as well. So, good guy to potentially add to that edge mix. Tyler Davis will compete to play some nose for the Rams. So that's an interesting pickup there in the 6th round. Joshua Carty to do a little bit kicking for him. Rarely see kickers get drafted, but maybe a couple a year. Joshua Carty was considered to be the best one in this draft. Jordan Whittington, can't say enough about this guy. He was a 5-star coming into Texas. Things didn't really go his way, couldn't really stay healthy, but is a high character guy, high work ethic, team leader. Everybody loves Jay Witt, and he's a really, really good run blocker. This is somebody that I knew was going to get drafted, didn't think it was going to be that high, but is a good guy to have on a team. Special teams impact probably in the NFL, but you want to bring him in to block. I know that doesn't seem crazy for a wide receiver, but it's a valuable trait to have. Solid hands as well. Bo Limmer from Arkansas kind of got dominated with another Texas player, Devondre Sweat, at the Senior Bowl, but some people really like Bo Limmer. So for a guy that has decent size and decent strength overall, yeah, didn't hold up well against Devondre Sweat, who's 365 pounds in the one-on-ones, but did a decent job against everybody else. And then KT Leviston from Kansas State ended up being the pick here. I think he's played both tackle and guard, so offers positional flexibility here for the Rams all the way down the board. I'm going to give the Raiders a B+. And I just think, for the most part, they stayed where they were, and they just got a really good player. Brock Bowers kicks things off, tight end out of Georgia, who's more than just your typical tight end. He's going to play in the slot. I think he can play a little bit in line as well. He could even play outside. He can catch screens. He's dynamic and amazing after the catch. Brock Bowers is a really, really good player and the best player available. If you wanted a big-time playmaker on offense, the top three wide receivers were gone. Brock Bowers is a really good alternative at 13. What does this mean for Michael Mayer? He probably, ends up being your more traditional inline tight end, even though you might have thought of him as a move tight end. Not the best blocker, but has size that indicates that he can get better in that department. Brock Bowers has rare talent as a receiver. Jackson Powers Johnson to play guard. Very, very good out in space. Big, strong, fast. Injury could be a bit of a problem for him. Can play center, obviously, in a pinch if something happens to Andre James. But he was drafted as guard. He's going to come in and compete to start at guard right away for the Raiders, who wanted to improve on the interior. Delmar Glaze. Thought it was a little bit early for Delmar Glaze at the top of the third round. Developmental tackle. He's a replacement for Jermaine Illuminor, I would imagine. I'm thinking he's going to end up playing right tackle for them. Does he end up being a starter? You'd hope so, taking him at the start of the third round there. But he's got a long way to go, a lot of development to do. But that is your Jermaine Illuminor replacement. And another developmental player with high upside, though, is DeCameron Richardson from Mississippi State. Has exceptional size and speed and length. This is a player who, if he develops properly, could really end up being a starting caliber corner for the Raiders. As cliche as it sounds, you can't teach 6'2" with long arms and 4'3" speed. So we'll see what happens with him. Tommy Eichenberg, a tackling machine, not great in space. Not a good cover player. That limits him. Dylan Laube from New Hampshire is a great receiver. Think of Danny Woodhead. I know it's kind of a lazy comp there, but Dylan Laube is the closest thing we've seen to Danny Woodhead in a while. He is my Danny Woodhead. Dylan Laube from New Hampshire, from UNH, receiving back here for the Raiders. And then grabbed Trey Taylor and MJ Devonshire down the board for more depth in the secondary. The Dolphins draft has potential to be really good. Now, they traded a future third to go up and get RB3 Jalen Wright, but Raheem Mostert's getting older. You got to worry about that. I think he's like 31, 32 years old at this point. So getting another running back in the mix, especially with Devon Achane, dealing with some injury stuff. I don't really mind getting Jalen Wright. It sucks you had to give up a third-round pick next year to go up and trade for him. But we'll kick things off with Chop Robinson, who has pretty exceptional potential. Didn't really produce a whole ton, but when I watched him, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought he was just going to be this twitched-up athlete with no hands, and I didn't really find that to be the case. Doesn't really have any counters, but has really flashed a really good swipe move, has obviously great ability to just get off the field with a classic speed rush, but need to continue to develop as a player. I keep talking about staying disciplined in his rush lanes. I think that's going to come with more time and more coaching. He's a designated pass rusher right away with potentially the chance to develop into a 3-down player for Miami. I like that in the first round. He's got high upside. Tremendous upside. Patrick Paul, another high upside guy. He's quite raw right now, but has tremendous size at 6'8", 331. And that's just how he was able to be a great pass protector at Houston. He was just bigger than everybody. Exceptional length. He has unbelievable size at offensive tackle, and there are a number of those guys in this class. Patrick Paul is raw, needs to develop, but you hope with NFL coaching that he's able to hit his ceiling. He's not going to be forced to start right away, but could end up developing into being a starter for Miami. Jalen Wright has exceptional athleticism. He's built like an RB1, 5'11", 210, very strong, very fast, explosive home run threat. Shocking that it just sounds like I'm describing any Miami Dolphins running back. Oh, exceptional speed, home run threat, can take anything the distance. Yeah, obviously, is a Miami Dolphins running back. But again, traded a 3rd round pick next year to get him in a way deeper class. This class was remarkably shallow. It was deep at receiver, and it was a bunch of really good tackles at the top. But I mean, look at all these positions that did not have a ton of top tier talent or depth, like defensive tackle, like edge, like linebacker, like safety, like running back. There's some solid running backs in this class. Again, but you don't really want to trade a future pick next year for RB3 Jalen Wright. But I like the player. I like the fit long term there. But again, trading a 3rd round pick next year is tough. Muhammad Kamara is another designated pass rusher right away, but I'm not sure he's ever going to be more than just a designated pass rusher. Explosive speed, undersized, DPR, not really going to be a 3-down player, I don't expect. Malik Washington in the 6th, I love. He is an explosive, twitchy, good route runner with pretty good hands. Will be a slot-only player in the NFL. Adds a lot of speed to this offense, though, which already has plenty. And I'll tell you what, Taj Washington, just like Jordan Whittington, is another one of these solid guys that I just would like to have on a team. Reliable, someone who, is not going to be a game changer for you, but just is a reliable option. And of course, can block a little bit as well. I'm going to give the Vikings a B as well. I like J.J. McCarthy because you didn't have to trade into the top 10 to get him. But of course, number 10 for J.J. McCarthy is a little bit rich for me. I had him as the number 33 player in the draft. But that's just based on what I'm seeing right now. Projection-wise, J.J. could end up being very, very good. And I think I might even being a little bit harsh with the B because I like McCarthy's potential. He does have a big arm. He does have pretty good athleticism. He flashes a couple times a game as this exceptional passer that can thread the needle. He can really throw into tight windows. And when you look at the rookie quarterback situations, you will not find a better situation than Minnesota. The Bears are making it close, but the Bears don't have Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill at left and right tackle. They don't have Justin Jefferson. DJ Moore is great. Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, very solid players. Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the league. Jordan Addison's a great combination with him, as is TJ Hawkinson at tight end. McCarthy with Kevin O'Connell I'm factoring in. I think he has the easiest path to being successful of any of these rookie QBs. The situation is amazing. The potential is awesome for J.J. McCarthy, and he's only 21 years old. Penix and Daniels and Nix, they're 24. You have 3 more years of development. What is J.J. McCarthy with his tools? What does he look like when he's 24? I think that's going to be incredibly fun to find out. Maybe he flakes out before then. Maybe he becomes a superstar for Minnesota. He's got that type of potential. Dallas Turner at 17. Had to move up a little bit to get him. Traded a little bit too much looking back at that. But I just like getting good players. And they got a good player. And I can't hate them for that. I think Dallas Turner at 17 is good value. He could have been a top 10 pick. He's an explosive player with great bend, decent power as well, and is a very solid run defender. Dallas Turner is going to compete to start right away. They bring in Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard. Turner is a really, really good player and has a super high ceiling as a player. Kyrie Jackson, all the way down here at the start of the 4th. Good value. Big time corner with great size and length. Decent speed as well. Moves pretty well for somebody that's 6'4", 194. Instant special teams value. Chance to become a starter for them. Walter Rouse here for Oklahoma. Great size and strength. Doesn't move especially well, but more depth on the O-line. Will Reichard has like the most points in college football history. Kicker. Reliable. The Vikings could use a reliable kicker. It's plagued them for their entire existence. And then Michael Juergen, center from Wake Forest. Don't know too much about. I read into it. Sounds like he is just a reliable starter with experience and will be depth. Maybe makes the team. We'll see. And Levi Drake Rodriguez from Texas A&M Commerce. 6'1", 269 on the interior. That is an interesting build. Obviously, Uh, Needs to be very fast and explosive for that size to have any type of an impact. It's an end of the roster type candidate. We'll see if he ends up being anything. I'm also going to give the Patriots a B. They got Drake May at number 1. I think that's awesome. Or at number 3 with their first pick. I think that's awesome. For me, he was the best player in the draft. I've received pushback on that. I don't care. I've watched him. I think he's incredible. I think if you're trying to talk about a pro-ready quarterback with experience in a number of different environments, right, behind a terrible offensive line, with a lack of playmakers, Drake May has shown you the ability to rise above that. If he was not on UNC this past season, they might not have won a game or two. I mean, they were horrendous. But Drake May elevated them. They still were not super successful. But the combination of arm talent, improvisational ability, the ability to also operate within the structure of the offense is something that I thought was above Caleb Williams. Drake May is an exceptional prospect. The Patriots did the right thing, sticking and picking at number 3. You need to get talent around him if he's going to be successful. Can't have any quarterback with that situation with the Patriots, but taking the QB was the right move at 3. It's easier to find tackle and wide receiver help down the board than it is a franchise QB. This was the right move. At number 2, they got him a nice, reliable option in Jalen Polk. Top 50 player for me. I love Jalen Polk. He is a great jump ball receiver who is awesome after the catch. His best work might be from the slot, but he's going to play outside here in New England, I would bet. His catch radius is so large. He's got great body control, great ability to adjust to the football. Jalen Polk is a QB's best friend. Throw the ball up, he's going to find a way to come down with it. Really like Jalen Polk here at the start of the second round. It's a monster receiver class. There was a run on him. Jalen Polk's a really, really good player. So, can't be too mad about that. And then Caden Wallace, I thought it was a little bit early for him, but I guess does have the potential to work into being a starter, likely at right tackle for the Patriots. Their offensive line's a bit of a mess. They were able to bring back Michael Onwenu. Caden Wallace, maybe you try him at left tackle, but probably an NFL right tackle. And when you look at them losing Trent Brown, that makes sense. But maybe Onwenu plays right tackle and Caden Wallace plays left tackle. I guess that's a possibility. Onwenu has a lot of different experience starting really everywhere across the offensive line. So we'll see what that offensive line looks like. Wallace is a good enough athlete that it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up being a good pro. But there's some development to do there. And I don't know if you're going to want to start him right away. We'll see what happens there. Layden Robinson, of course, another guy wasn't particularly high on. He's got good size. He's a mauler in the run game, but that's kind of it. See if he develops at the top of the 4th round. Javon Baker, this was what I liked. Get more weapons for Drake May. He's another guy who can go up and get the football. He can get open, but he has a similar skill set really to Jalen Polk. Good after the catch, good body control, good ability to adjust to the football. They have a type, clearly. And these are nice options to go alongside who, in my opinion, is probably their best receiver in Demario Douglas in the slot. Now, they do have Kendrick Bourne. Tyquan Thornton is a deep threat for them, but it really is obviously an uninspiring receiver room. Getting more guys in the mix makes sense. And then I loved what they did at the end of the draft, really. Joe Milton, if you need a tight end, I don't know. He can't really play quarterback, but he has a huge arm. He's a very athletic player. He has a huge arm. I mean, incredible arm strength. Not a lot of accuracy. He's super inconsistent as a passer. He's very frustrating to watch. But you can't talk about Joe Milton without mentioning the huge arm. I mean, he can throw it 100 yards. It's incredible. But Jaheim Bell. Think Jonnu Smith. He's a move tight end. He's an H-back. He could be a fun player. And yeah, think Jonnu Smith. They're going to be asked to do similar things. Marcellus Dial here from South Carolina didn't end up getting to watch. Sounds like he's got quite good speed. Am I being aggressive with the Saints here? I might be. I'm giving them an A-. I like the class a lot, of course. You picked at 14. You got Talisa Fuanga. He's a starting right tackle right away. Might even try him at left tackle. He's athletic enough to where I think that could work. I also think his best NFL position could end up being guard, but based on who the Saints have there, I mean, you gotta play him at tackle. Mauler in the run game. As I've said the whole process, he is the most fun offensive lineman to watch because he's a finisher in the run game. He will bully you. He really does play bully ball, and I think is fine value here at number 14. Kool-Aid McKinstry, looks to be a steal down the board here midway through or near the top of the second round. Long arms. He's good in press, very patient corner. He can operate well in zone coverage. I think he's just athletic enough to be able to be good in man coverage, but was the second best corner on that Alabama team, in my opinion, with Terrion Arnold. Kool-Aid came into the season with a lot of hype. Just didn't end up quite living to that. Gives you good value on special teams as well, but I think will end up being a starting outside corner for them and a great fit for their scheme, by the way. This is a really nice pickup for them. And then Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler, Zach Wilson comp. Whoa, okay. Spencer Rattler does have dynamic arm talent. Maybe dynamic's not the right word, but he's got an electric live arm. He really, in terms of guys with NFL starter arm talent in this class, he is with that group of guys. He's got a huge arm. Again, he is inconsistent throwing the football in the intermediate and short areas of the field. He was actually very accurate throwing the ball downfield in 2023. The offensive line has not been good there. The weapons have not been good at the same time or healthy at the same time in the case of Juice Wells and Xavier Legette. But Spencer Rattler played well. And it's tough for me to, forget about the, shithead personality on the reality show QB1 Beyond or Under the Lights or whatever it's called. He was, you've seen the clips probably. He's intolerable. Nutcase. But he was also, 16, 17 years old, right? Goes to South Carolina, goes to Oklahoma. Had a decent season. Some people thought he was going to win the Heisman. Some people thought he was going to be the number 1 overall pick. I did not think he was going to be the Heisman. I projected him high in the draft because, that's what you do is you bet on the upside. And even though I said in my way too early mock draft, I'm like, hey, people are projecting him up this high. If everything goes right, maybe. I don't see it. And I ended up being right. I'll take that. He didn't go anywhere close to number 1 overall. He ended up having to transfer after being benched for Caleb Williams, and apparently has really matured over the years at South Carolina. Was there for a couple of seasons, and the tape is good. He could legitimately end up being a starter for the Saints. This is a steal to me because the upside is legit. Will he reach that? Again, it's tough to put the image out of your head of the awful personality that we saw on that reality show and to a degree at Oklahoma. But it seems like he's changed and matured over the years. I'm certainly not the same same person I was, when I was 17 years old, right? So maybe we give Rattler a pass, but as a player, I'm telling you, he has tremendous potential. This is really good value in the 5th round because he could legitimately end up being a starter. Bub Means in the 5th. This is someone that really caught my eye at the combine. Big time deep threat. Could be very, very interesting. To see if he works into the rotation of receivers, but special teams value. And I got to talk about Jalen Ford. Horns up. Texas had 11 players drafted. Ford was one of them. He's a big-time playmaker for Texas. He's not the most athletic, but he's athletic enough. He's instinctive in coverage. He's been a big-time player. He's made big-time plays as a blitzer. Whenever Texas needed a play, Jalen Ford made the play. He just is one of those guys that was never going to end up going that high in the draft, but is just a playmaker. And I know you can't quantify that, but I'll tell you what, I think Jalen Ford's going to end up being a solid player. And one of those guys, it's like, how did he slip this deep in the draft? All he did was make plays at Texas. Is not amazing against the run, and I get it, but when you need a big play, the guy's got a knack for doing it. Christian Boyd in the 6th. A lot of people loved him. Got to watch him at a Northern Iowa, 6'4", 317. Short arms, unfortunately, but is explosive off the ball. Feisty, high motor interior defensive lineman. Has rotational upside right away that could end up being a starter, but that's if everything goes right. He was one of like the draft darlings. And then Josiah Aziram from Eastern Kentucky, I have never watched. He's got 6'6", 330-pound size, and that is pretty huge. From a small school, trying to find something to develop there. We'll see if he makes a roster. And we've made it to the Giants. All the way back here at the start, giving them a B+. It's a really good grade. I think they had a really solid draft, starting with Malik Neighbors at number 6 overall. Neighbors is absolutely incredible after the catch. I don't see the Jalen Waddle comp at all. Man, these have been, and that's part of the fun of watching, players, is we all come up with different opinions about the players that we watch. Yeah, I really don't see Jalen Waddle, other than these guys are both fast. I guess they're both good after the catch. Neighbors is incredible after the catch, though, and has a ton of play strength. He is a really, really strong and fast guy. I mean, he's destroyed different corners on slot fades, and that's part of where you can, take advantage of slower corners. Oftentimes, smaller, slower corners get pushed into the slot, especially in college. If you move your best receiver with tremendous speed and downfield ability, it's going to be tough for a slot corner to compete with lesser size and lesser speed. And, I mean, LSU did that a lot. But feeding Neighbors the ball underneath, he is a touchdown waiting to happen. He can take slants to the house. Can take shallow crossers to the house. Can take anything to the house. Now, of course, who's going to throw him the ball? Daniel Jones was bad in 2023, but didn't have a lot of help. Keep that in mind. And then he got hurt, obviously. I don't know why people think that, if J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix or Michael Penix went to the Giants at number 6, that all of a sudden their problems from the previous year are gone. Neighbors helps alleviate those. Daniel Jones is a fringe top 15 quarterback, which isn't great. There are really not 15 good quarterbacks in the NFL. That's why so many teams are drafting QB. They want to find that next guy. But if you think, J.J. McCarthy is going to come out, or Bo Nix or Michael Penix, and be better than Daniel Jones as a rookie, I don't really think that it's going to happen. McCarthy could be because of the situation. Nix, you never know. But it's really tough for a rookie to come out and play really well, especially without weapons and without an offensive line. The Giants have done a good job upgrading the offensive line. They bring in Jermaine Illuminor. They bring in John Runyon Jr. I wish they would have grabbed an offensive lineman in this class, but Neighbors was absolutely the right pick at number 6 overall. No rookie quarterback at that spot is going to come in and play well right away, and maybe you think you can bench him. The next year's quarterback class is not very good, but Neighbors was the right pick. Neighbors was absolutely the right pick. Needed to get a big-time playmaker. The Giants just didn't have it. Didn't. Tyler Nubin in the 2nd round, I think, is a solid pick. He is not super athletic, lacks top-end speed, but plays a position where you don't need to have top-end speed. It helps, obviously, but when you're instinctive, when you're able to bait quarterbacks the way that he does, you find yourself with a lot of turnovers forced, and he was able to do that. He's able to bait QBs consistently. He's a ball hawk. He is a really, really solid player who is definitely quicker than fast. He's got good size, good length, good ability to come downhill and defend the run. He is a solid player at a real position of need for the Giants. And then Andrew Phillips, a little bit different here at the top of the 3rd round. Andrew Phillips is a really good athlete. I think right away, he is going to be a good slot corner. Do the Giants try him on the outside? Ends up being the question. He is a super freak athlete with good speed, but tremendous overall explosiveness. I want to see him be a little bit more aggressive in coverage. But he's very good at firing down and defending the run. Missed tackles can happen. That's something that can go away with coaching. He's got size and aggressiveness, and I definitely like that. But yeah, this is a guy who's kind of more under the radar. I know I've hyped him up over the process. I know Dane Brugler really likes him. I know Daniel Jeremiah had him as a fringe top 50 player. This is solid value at the top of the third round at a position of need. I know a lot of you are not going to know the name, but the player is quite good and has good potential. Just got to see if we can meet that. Theo Johnson in the 4th round. What a great pickup. He's got elite size, elite speed, elite athleticism. He's a solid route runner who's decent after the catch. He's one of the best 5 tight ends in the class, easily. ESPN has him at number 8. This is a really, really solid selection with high upside. He will probably end up being the Giants' starting tight end within 2 years, especially if Darren Waller ends up retiring. I know that's been heavily rumored right now. I don't know if we have confirmation on that. Daniel Bellinger's good, does not have nearly the upside of Theo Johnson. And people were not high on the Tyrone Tracy pick. Tyrone Tracy is a monster player. Kind of another draft darling. You know, I went on Kyle Yates' podcast. If you guys know him in the fantasy community, he asked me to come on. I'm like, I'm not really a fantasy guy, but I'll see what I can do. And I picked 5 players that I had to have if I was making a fantasy team. And the first one I mentioned was Tyrone Tracy Jr., and this was a couple weeks ago. And so this is not just Giants draft him and I like him. I like Tyrone Tracy Jr. a lot. He's a former receiver who's still learning to play running back, but has incredible athleticism, is incredibly explosive, very good speed and obvious ability to catch the football, but he's also got great contact balance and power, and he's a good blocker. I think Tyrone Tracy is a heck of a player. His real deficiencies come with lack of experience, vision and patience as a runner. He is a 1-year starter at running back. The sky is the limit for Tyrone Tracy. I think he will end up being the Giants' starting running back during his rookie contract, or at least split carries with Devin Singletary. I think he is a better prospect than Eric Gray was, and I like Eric Gray. But Tyrone Tracy Jr. is a high upside guy. We'll see if he can end up meeting that upside. And then Darius Mussau, I wasn't a huge fan of the selection. I think he will end up being a special teamer, but it's tough to complain about anything in the 6th round. He's undersized, not super athletic or anything, but yeah, we'll see. Jets get a flat B, and they start with Olu Fashanu. Fan of the channel, by the way, so you know he's a high IQ type player. I'm going to keep making that same joke. I will never stop. Olu Fashanu is a great pass protecting offensive tackle that was one of the only true left tackles in this class, which if you value the blindside protector, which most teams do have right-handed quarterbacks, Fashanu's value increases even more so. Again, one of the best, if not the best, pass-protecting offensive tackles in this class. Did struggle with power at times. You watch the Ohio State games over the past couple of years, like JT Tuimoloau was not exactly shut down by Fashanu. And Jack Sawyer, I want to say, had his moments as well, but Tuimoloau was one that stood out to me. But Fashanu, even if he would have come out last year, probable top 5 pick, still goes in the top 11. Improved as a run blocker in 2023. He is a really, really solid player. To the Jets, you cannot rely on the health of Tyron Smith. You can't do it. He's not shown the ability to stay healthy over a full season for really all of his career, and he's getting older. I don't expect that to get much better. Morgan Moses is also older as well. At worst, right? Worst case scenario, Olu Fashanu is a swing tackle if there's an injury comes into play. Best case scenario, he's a franchise left tackle or even right tackle of the future until Tyron Smith happens, or like retires or whatever, or leaves. But Fashanu is a really, really good player, as is Malachi Corley at the top of the 3rd round. And I love his fit with the Jets. He is a slot receiver who is unbelievable after the catch. You look at Garrett Wilson, great wide receiver 1. Mike Williams, great jump ball 50-50 guy. Bring him in for a year. Corley is the monster yards after catch guy. Incredibly strong. He's like a running back with the football. You're not going to find Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel's a 1 of 1. Malachi Corley is the next best thing. He is that good after the catch. Really, really strong, really powerful. Again, it's like watching a running back out in space. And he's got exceptional speed. I mean, he's really fast. Even though his route tree was not incredibly diverse at Western Kentucky, I mean, he was catching a lot of screens and slot fades and things like that, but mostly stuff underneath. The slot fades, I mean, he burns corners down the field. And he's so quick and athletic that I don't think route running is going to be a problem for him if he's asked to, pick up more routes. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think he's great value at the top of the 3rd round, and he's an awesome option to start right away in the slot for the Jets. Great player. Braylon Allen at the end of the 4th. Allen obviously is quite young, got great size, and he's shifty in space for a bigger back. Would like to see him get a little bit more powerful for that size, and does not have top-tier explosiveness or speed, but is a solid downhill runner for sure. Jordan Travis, they moved up to get. Solid backup potentially. Can definitely move at quarterback. Don't hate it, I guess. Isaiah Davis offers good depth out of South Dakota State. I thought he was one of the better running backs in this class. Ends up falling to the end of the 5th round, but is quite good. He was a really fun player to watch. And South Dakota State, they've continued to be producing good players. Mason McCormick, another guy I watched from South Dakota State in this process, really athletic offensive lineman for them. We'll talk about in a bit. I believe he was a Steelers draft pick. We'll get to that in a minute. And then I'll tell you, Quantez Stiggers here from the Argonauts of the CFL. I've only seen highlights. It's the CFL, right? He completely didn't play college football. To my knowledge, he's a very interesting path to the NFL. Very cool that he was drafted. All of his highlights are just overthrows where he's in position. He's got a ton of production as a result. He was an East-West Shrine Game guy. It's a really cool story, and we'll see if he can earn a starting job at corner at some point over his rookie contract. He's quite young. Coming over from the CFL, he's like 22 or 23, so he's not especially old. And then Jalen Key was a transfer, right, who ended up having decent production in limited snaps. I know the Eagles had a good draft because after every pick, I was like, damn. They did it again. Okay. The Eagles crushed it. I think they're an A+. Got Quinyon Mitchell to fall to them at 22. Didn't have to trade up. Just got CB1 in the draft, likely at 22. He's an incredible athlete. He has very good size. And again, when we talk about small school guys, I worry about it a little bit less at corner because you're looking at the movement. You're looking at the ability in space. He triggers downhill so quickly and is not afraid to come up and tackle. He is a monster. Goes at 22. Starting corner on the outside. Cooper DeJean at 40. Man, how did they do it? He was a top 20 player in the class for me. I had him at number 20. And Jarius Sneed is a comp. Okay, wow. I don't really think of them as similar players at all. But Cooper DeJean does have great size, very good length, very good speed, and offers a ton of versatility. Great tackler, right? Like Cooper DeJean is a really, really good player that might end up moving back to safety and probably will with this Eagles team. He's a heck of a player. He's a heck of a player. Has returned kicks and punts for Iowa. He was just the best player on the field whenever he was out there. Just one of those guys. He's just really good at football. That's what I can say about Cooper DeJean. And then Jalix Hunt from Houston Christian. Found out about him pretty early in the cycle. Obviously a small school guy, but NFL size, NFL explosiveness, really high upside type guy if he continues to develop his hands as a rusher. This is someone that could really be a menace. And I don't like the Eagles getting these high upside guys because if it works out, I mean, they're going to continue to build their monster team, and he's going to be a solid rotational player for them early. They lose to Son Reddick, but they bring in Jalix Hunt. Obviously not going to be the same type of player right away, but man, Jalix Hunt has potential to be really, really good. Will Shipley at the end of the 4th. This is fine. Like, he is a scat back. Bring him into the mix. Second or third running back upside on the team that can catch the football out of the backfield. Aniyah Smith was another guy when I'm like, damn, the Eagles got another guy that I thought was being undervalued in the process because he's another gadget type player, but is really quick, is really shifty, is a hybrid running back receiver. And yeah, he might have a small role in the team, maybe only a couple plays a game where he touches the football, but they're going to be designed for him. You know, you're thinking somewhere down the line, and he can really make you pay. He is a playmaker on offense. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., hey, cool story. Eagles with Jeremiah Trotter. and they bring in his son. Why is he available? Well, the tape isn't great. He's undersized at 6 foot 228. He does not have great speed. He is not very good in space. You can point to interceptions. That does not mean you're a great cover player. I know it's like, well, he did the thing that you want to do in coverage. But, you know, tip balls can be interceptions, right? Sometimes you're in the right spot, but consistently he was not. He's just not very good in space or in coverage, and I don't think he's a 3-down player. And the lack of size makes me wonder how he's going to fare as an NFL linebacker against bigger offensive linemen. I don't know. We'll see. It's a fun story. Trevor Keegan out of Michigan, high character guy, good depth on the O-line. But my favorite guard pickup for them was Dylan McMahon. McMahon has played center, has played guard, and is a superb athlete. I don't like him going to the Eagles because I know Jeff Stoutland's going to develop him into being a starter, and he's going to be the next Jason Kelce somehow. It's going to be incredibly frustrating. He is a really, really good athlete with great movement skills in space. And then Johnny Wilson has high upside as a rotational player. He's 6'6", 230, tested really well. Can play in the slot. He's not a tight end. Doesn't block like a tight end. He's not a great route runner, but can really go up and get the football. I thought he was even 6'7", 6'6", 231. But, I mean, worst case scenario for me, not for the Eagles, but worst case scenario, he ends up being like Jimmy Graham in the red zone. I mean, he's frustrating. Yeah, Darren Waller's the comp. I could see it, I guess. He could be a real problem. Don't even have to change the graphic here. Pennsylvania killed the draft. Philadelphia and Western Pennsylvania with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Troy Fautanu drafted at number 20. Top 20 player in the class for me. He's going to be a tackle for them. He played tackle at Washington. The arms are long enough. Met that 34-inch threshold. He can stick a tackle. And he's got really good movement ability. Now, he can get a little bit aggressive. He can overset, and that's kind of, one of the things that made you think he was going to move inside to guard. But with Pittsburgh, he's going to play tackle. Broderick Jones stays at right tackle. They've really upgraded their interior. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Fautanu has great hands. He's a really good player. Starting upside at left tackle right away. Zach Frazier, starting upside at center right away. I thought he was a top 50 player in the class. And we know the league doesn't really value centers too much, but yeah, of course, wrestling background at line, or on the interior offensive line, I'm in. Any lineman, really. You got a wrestling background. You got a great feel for leverage. You know how to not get beat. You're super strong. Frazier's as tough as they come. I mean, I keep referencing how I'm watching him. I think he played against Baylor, and the guy broke his leg, and he's like limping off the field so his team doesn't have to burn a timeout at the end of the game. Like, this guy's an animal, man. And, he goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is their type of guy. I mean, hard-nosed, gritty, and, West Virginia guy. It's not too long of a trip to Pitt. I feel like he is just a great fit, and they needed a starting center desperately. Offensive line's been upgraded massively. Roman Wilson, wide receiver, he could have been a top 50 pick in terms of talent, but it's a stacked receiver class. I know some people had a mock going in the first round. He doesn't have great size, a little under 5'11", I think 5'10 and 3/4 maybe, 185 pounds. It's funny, closer to 5'10 than 6 foot, and Michigan has him at 6 foot on their website. I guess that was in case girls were checking out his Tinder profile or from, whatever the joke would be there. Roman Wilson's incredibly fast. He's an incredibly willing blocker. Route pacing is kind of the thing where I watch. I'm like, hey, if you don't run every route at full speed, your speed is going to take guys by surprise more. You're going to have better timing with the quarterback. And so I think becoming a more nuanced route runner is going to be something that elevates his game. But the upside is there. And he's not just a slot receiver that you'd think about with that size. He can play on the outside, especially with that electric speed. Peyton Wilson at the end of the third round. He's a great player. Fringe top 50 guy for me. Didn't end up making it into the top 50. Very worried about the injury stuff with him. Some shoulder injuries, multiple torn ACLs, no ACL in one knee now. But the tape is really good. He's another guy that's just a playmaker, obviously tested quite well, very fast, nose for the football. Not going to be a Mike, probably. More of a Sam, really. I'll be interested to see where the Steelers decide to end up playing him with the addition of Patrick Queen, who really isn't a Mike either. So we'll see. Peyton Wilson could end up being that Mike linebacker. Definitely has a size for it. We'll see if he's got the recognition ability to be that guy. So we'll see, but he's great. Would have gone a lot earlier, I think, if not for the vicious injury history. And then Mason McCormick in the 4th, another great athlete with a lot of experience for South Dakota State. He was another really fun player to watch. Tested really, really well, and I think he's got starting upside for this team. I think he could eventually overtake Isaac Seumalo, or maybe he leaves. Their offensive line of the future being from left to right, Troy Fautanu, Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier, James Daniels, and Broderick Jones, obviously, profiles to be a really good, really athletic, really young group of guys. And I think that's awesome. I really liked Logan Lee down the board. Logan Lee is 6'5", 280, a little light, shorter arms, but has a great feel for leverage, great high motor guy, very solid against the run, offers pass rush upside. In the 6th round, I really liked Logan Lee. I think he's a really good day 3 lottery ticket. And then Ryan Watts. His best fit for me was always going to be the Steelers with his size, and he tested well, but lack of top-end speed. Going to the Steelers was his best chance, and of course, the Steelers get him in the 6th round. He's a perfect player for them. He's got exceptional size and length. Again, tested well, but that top-tier speed didn't really show up on tape. But in the Steelers' heavy press system, oh my goodness, is he going to end up being a good player somehow? Like, of course, hook him, throw up the horns, but there is not a better player to team fit really in the entire draft. It's a perfect fit, and I could really see Ryan Watts end up being good. This was an easy A+. I didn't dislike a player the Steelers got, and they got great value on most of them. I think a B is fair for the Seahawks. I really liked their first few picks, starting with, of course, Texas legend Byron Murphy. What a player. Has such a great feel for leverage, as I've said, the entire process. And he has so many fun techniques, including dropping down to a knee, and still he's able to overpower defenders and hold his gap. He's just such an incredible player. Was unblockable down the stretch for Texas as well. Offers a ton of pass rush upside as well. And I have said that I think he'll be used similarly to Justin Madubuike if he were to go to a team like Seattle, and here he is. I think it's a great fit. It's very easy to project what role he's going to play and how much success he's going to find. This was a great pickup at number 16 for Seattle. Christian Haynes into the 3rd round. I don't know why he was available. I thought he was a top 50 player in the draft. He was dominant with big-time power. He's athletic enough. I think he was the best true guard in the draft. And that's the guys that are just only going to be a guard. Don't think about centers. Don't think about tackles moving inside. Don't think about tackles moving to center, center moving to guard. Pure guards, Christian Haynes was the best in the draft, clearly, to me. And I would have loved for a team like the Giants to take him even in the middle of the 2nd round at 47. The Seahawks get him midway through the 3rd round. It's an easy replacement for Damian Lewis, who they lose in free agency. He is a plug-and-play starter, and that is a really nice pickup. Tyrese Knight, I imagine, is going to be good depth at linebacker. They lose Jordan Brooks. They're able to bring in Jerome Baker, but Tyrese Knight offers somebody that can at least potentially rotate in and play special teams. I know saying someone's going to be a special teams player is not the most exciting thing in the world, but I think it's true of A.J. Barner as well. He's a really good blocker with obvious NFL size at 6'6", 251. Decent enough athlete. Don't know if he's going to contribute a ton in the passing game, but has flashed at times for Michigan. Although, if you watch their offense, it was hard not to see Colston Loveland, who could be a 1st-round pick next year at tight end for Michigan. He is a beast. Barner just not on the same level, obviously. Nehemiah Pritchett, fun player. And they got him and DJ James. I said I thought DJ James might end up going a little bit earlier than Nehemiah Pritchett. They just get both of them. Both of them are quite good athletes. I know nothing about Michael Jarrell from Findlay. but 6'5", 294. Decent size at offensive tackle, but short arms are kind of a killer there at that size. So potentially going to move inside to guard, but is he heavy enough to do that? Again, I'm not sure about Michael Jarrell. Might not even end up making the roster, but was drafted at the end of the 6th round. So the hope is probably there. But James and Nehemiah Pritchett were one of the best SEC duos last year. Both quite good athletes. And then Sato'oa Lamea, big, strong, versatile offensive lineman. Sounds like he's probably just going to play guard, but that's exactly what the Seahawks need, is more competition on the interior. And, you know, if everything goes right, potentially develop into a starter. Great in the 6th round. I think the 49ers get a strong B as well. I like their draft. Kicked off with Ricky Pearsall, which was a surprise to see him go in the 1st round, but the talent is absolutely there. He tested really well. He's obviously made some incredible highlight reel catches if you've seen him play. You know how hard it is to catch the football overhand? It's unbelievable. And at the end of this, he takes an absolutely massive hit as well. Still holds onto the ball. Probably best served as a slot receiver with his skill set, but he's good after the catch. He's a really solid route runner with quite good speed. I think he can play on the outside, and his ability after the catch feels like an obvious fit in a Kyle Shanahan offense. He is a perfect fit for them, so I like Ricky Pearsall for sure. But, you know, it's not like the value's incredible. You know, you have to be pretty high on him to rank him 35th in the class. I thought, you know, a little bit lower than that, but the upside is absolutely there. Ricky Pearsall, I think, is going to be quite a solid player. There are a lot of guys in this class that I feel good about. You know, it's tough to say, hey, you know, they're going to reach top 10 player at their position in the NFL. That's obviously what you'd like, taking a player in the 1st round. But at 31, you know, obviously it's a little bit harder to do that. I think Ricky Pearsall will be a solid and reliable contributor, and it wouldn't shock me to see him put up over 1,000 yards at some point in his career, but I'm not sure he's going to get there. But he's quite a good player, as is Renardo Green. I liked him at the end of the 2nd round. Big, physical corner. I thought he was much better than 106 in the draft. He had his best game against Malik Neighbors and really shut him down. I mean, it was an incredible performance. He's definitely athletic enough. As I talked about with Jacksonville, you know, I love the FSU corners in this draft. Different flavors, but Renardo Green is big, physical, great press corner, and he is a starter soon for the 49ers that really desperately needed a starter at the position. Dominic Pooney I really liked. I thought he was a fringe top 50 player in the draft. Dominant pass protecting left tackle at Kansas that I think is going to move inside to guard, and that's where the 49ers need help. I think he's going to, again, compete to start at guard somewhere early on in his rookie contract. This is a really, really solid player that is great value deep into the 3rd round. Malik Mustafa, again, feels like the perfect fit here because Mustafa is a physical, downhill, strong safety that's great against the run. Not so great in space as a cover player, I found, but very good and fun against the run. I know a lot of people really like Malik Mustafa. I would have had him far above 149, but not quite near my top 50. Probably closer to 100, I would say, for Malik Mustafa. But you look at the 49ers and what they've been able to do with their safeties, and, you know, you look at, you know, Talanoa Hufanga, and I think Malik Mustafa has a similar skill set, and I could see him being similarly effective for that team if he develops properly. Isaac Guerrero, perfect Kyle Shanahan running back with excellent speed. Could see him being quite effective. Jacob Cowing, very productive, undersized slot receiver who's fast and quick, but not sure what his NFL ceiling is going to be, but it wouldn't be shocking if he became a contributor. And then I didn't know anything about Jarrett Kingston. Of course, I watched USC, but was not impressed with their offensive line, and this was not a name I knew when he was drafted, and that's not ideal. He is potentially someone that makes the roster. We'll see, and you can say that for a lot of these guys. And here's Tatum Bethune. I think was a Senior Bowl guy. No, was he East-West? He might have been East-West Shrine. Yeah, the fun fact that I remembered is his great-great-great-aunt is Mary McLeod Bethune, who's one half of what would end up being Bethune-Cookman, the college. So kind of a cool connection there for Tatum Bethune. But almost like a hybrid safety type linebacker. I think he was on the East-West Shrine Game watch list early on in the year. But it could be an interesting special teamer all the way down the board. And I think the Bucs did well in the draft as well, kicking things off with Graham Barton, a tackle at Duke, who did play center there as well, who is expected to move inside to center. He is a really, really solid prospect. A little bit on the shorter arm side, but very physical, finisher in the run game. Apparently a very intelligent guy as well. It's like a match made in heaven for a center. Really, really good player. Love him in the run, and he's strong enough against the pass as well to anchor and defend against interior defensive line pressure. Chris Braswell, I had him mocked to the Bucs. I thought it was a really great fit. I see him as a Shaq Barrett replacement. It was really easy to see. He's athletic, a little bit older, had a late breakout, but of course you would if Braswell, if Will Anderson Jr. and Dallas Turner are ahead of you on the depth chart. Braswell stepped in the Will Anderson Jr. role in 2023 and was really, really good. He is definitely super athletic, and the Bucs needed to go out and improve their pass rush. I think if Chop Robinson got there at 26, they would have done that. Instead, they pivot to Chris Braswell in the second round, and I think that's a pretty nice pivot. Tyke Smith at the end of the third, I really like him. He's smaller, but instinctive, physical. He loves to come down and hit. He's a hybrid safety / nickel. We'll see what his role ends up being with Tampa. I would say, think about Jordan Whitehead skill set for Tampa Bay Bucs. So I could see him being a similarly skilled player. Jalen McMillan in the third round. One of the better slot receivers in this class. He's a good route runner with decent hands, decent speed, offers decent ability down the board as well. He is a really nice option there for Tampa, who could afford to get more receivers in that room. Jalen McMillan is a nice option, as is Bucky Irving. Again, they could use more running backs in that group. He's going to be a change of pace guy. Bucky Irving's a really nice player. He's patient, he's shifty as a running back, and can catch the ball as well. So, yes, they have Rashad White, but Bucky Irving should rotate in. I don't know for fantasy guys what this does for his value, but I expect Bucky Irving to play as a rookie. Good player. Elijah Klein from UTEP, offensive guard, was the next pick for Tampa. Didn't really know much about him, but 5-year starter at UTEP. And then Devin Culp, I was hoping to see drafted. He is a little bit undersized for a typical tight end, but very athletic. Again, kind of like a move tight end H-back. I think he's going to be somebody that moves around like a Jonnu Smith, like we talked about earlier. So Devin Culp, typical move tight end H-back, hybrid fullback tight end. Very good athleticism. Could be a fun player and is very, very different than Washington's Cade Otton, of course, who's down there in Tampa Bay as well. I think I'd like a B for the Tennessee Titans as well. And this might be the heaviest draft I've ever seen to start. I mean, are you kidding me? J.C. Latham is listed at 340. I mean, Alabama had him, I think, at 360. He is a big dude, whatever the weight is, and he's incredibly strong. Apparently, will be playing left tackle for the Tennessee Titans. So moving on over. And there was a thought that he was going to do that in 2023. But, of course, they started the rookie Caden Proctor, who then transferred to Iowa, got NIL money, and then transferred back to Alabama. But J.C. Latham is athletic enough, I think, to move to left tackle, but his claim to fame is size and strength. He's got vice grips for hands. Unbelievable true strength and power for J.C. Latham. I mean, it's so tough to beat him when he gets hands on you, and because of his unbelievable size, it's not hard for him to do that. We will see how he moves over to left tackle and handles that transition. And then, I mean, Devondre Sweat is somehow even bigger at 6'5", 366. His weight has fluctuated between college and the offseason, but I'll tell you what, if Devondre Sweat can get it all under control and together, and if he can play sub 360, he's going to be at his best self. He's going to be able to play more snaps and be more effective, but this is your traditional 0 or 1 tech. He is a nose tackle who is a space eater, but can also push the pocket. This is going to sound ridiculous. You have to stay with me here. But for his size, he is incredibly athletic. You got to remember, he's played at 370 pounds for Texas, right? But for that size, surprisingly quick, right? But is tremendous against the run, was the best lineman in football, in college football this past season, won the Outland Trophy for best interior linemen, which includes defensive tackles and then tackles and interior offensive linemen as well. So, again, that's not a mistake. Offensive line plus interior D-line for interior lineman award at the next level, or at college football. I'm sorry, it's late, and I've been not sleeping too much. But Devondre Sweat, don't sleep on him. DWI in the draft process. Apparently, it was a very weird situation, and it was all explained to Tennessee, and they felt comfortable going and getting him here at the top of the second round. He's got the upside to be one of the best nose tackles in the NFL. He's got to get his weight under control to maximize his success and amount of snaps played in the NFL. Cedric Gray, I loved in the 4th round. I didn't have him as a fringe top 50 guy, but I thought, definitely top 75. He is definitely a very athletic linebacker with obvious starter potential there in Tennessee. They lose Azeez Al-Shire. I think Cedric Gray could be a good long-term replacement. Jarvis Brownlee, I thought, was pretty good value in the 5th. Probably going to be a nickel corner for Tennessee, but we'll see what ends up happening. Can definitely defend the run the way a nickel corner you'd like to be able to see them do. Jaquan Jackson, I thought, was good value here in the 6th. ESPN doesn't love him, but again, this was such a stacked receiver class. I think Jaquan Jackson has slot starter upside long-term, special teams value right away, especially as a returner. James Williams is a hybrid linebacker safety. He is obviously quite big for a safety. Is probably going to be an NFL linebacker. Is he a tweener? We'll have to see what ends up happening with him, but upside is there. Upside is absolutely there. And then Jalen Harrell to finish things off. One of the last picks of the draft here. Harrell's got very good size, decent athleticism as well. Have to see if he makes a team for Tennessee. And then we're going to finish things off with the Washington Commanders, giving them a B+. I like their draft. I think Jaden Daniels at 2 is a really good fit in the Cliff Kingsbury offense. Jaden Daniels has great accuracy downfield and is a tremendous runner of the football. Needs to do better to limit big hits, but overall the accuracy and speed, I think he's going to end up being a pretty good player if he ends up developing. Not top-tier overall arm strength, but very good accuracy. Jerzon Newton, top of the 2nd round. This was not really a need for the Commanders. It was just BPA, and I don't mind that because if you operate by taking best player available, your team's going to stay good. If you just take a position of need and a player just that isn't all that great, you're just going to end up needing to replace them. So take BPA, and he's going to be a rotational monster for them right away. He was the best true pass rushing interior defensive lineman in this class. 3 technique that will rotate in with the Commanders. Obviously, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. They're going to be the starters, but Newton on 3rd downs is going to be a problem for opposing offensive lines. Mike Sainristil, I love. Best starting nickel corner in the class. He's a stud. He is a stud. Not going to play on the outside at all, but think Mike Hilton with Mike Sainristil here. Really, really good player. Instinctive, great against the run, great in coverage. Just one of those guys that can really do everything you'd want a nickel corner to be able to do. He is a beast. Ben Sinnott, not Sinnott, Sinnott there, the pick in the middle or back into the 2nd round. I don't know if I love the fit with the Commanders because Sinnott's more of that move tight end, that H-back hybrid fullback tight end type player. But I wonder if he's going to be asked to play more in line with the Commanders. We'll have to see. But I really like him as a player. Don't know if I love the fit. Brandon Coleman is a hybrid tackle / guard. I think first of all, he's a great athlete. Certainly athletic enough to stick at left tackle, long enough arms to do so. He's also played guard for TCU. His best position might end up being guard, but I would try him at tackle first, especially considering what the Commanders' needs are. Left tackle could be a problem. Luke McCaffrey was the 100th pick in the draft, last pick of the second day, round 3. Luke McCaffrey is a solid player with good hands, good route running ability, decent enough speed as well. Thought there were better receivers on the board, but McCaffrey could end up being quite a solid player. Jordan McGee, I think, was their best day 3 pick. He is an undersized linebacker with great speed, great ability to shoot downfield. and a very good blitzer as well. Was one of the more fun day 3 prospects to watch. And Dominique Hampton out of Washington, Javonte Jean-Baptiste ended their draft here. Could be special teams contributors. We'll see if Jean-Baptiste can make the team. Of course, has very good length and size overall. And Hampton, very good athlete, very good size. Special teamer probably, but we'll see if he ends up working into their secondary. But that is grading every team in the draft. That is every team. My brain is mashed potatoes. Hopefully I didn't make too many mistakes when speaking. But thank you very much for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.